We have Mercedes saying hello from Spain. We have Courtney saying hello from Tennessee. We have Czech hellos or hi from Czech from Michaela, and George says hello from Colorado. Marcena says is from Poland, and Eileen is tuning in from Colorado. And then we have Luann from Texas. I never know how to pronounce all of your names because you're from everywhere. We have Jeffrey, happy Thursday from Jacksonville, Florida. Jolene, greetings from Minnesota. Rui from Germany, or Rui. Deborah from Idaho, Carol from Ontario, Eric from Kansas City, Wendy from Florida, lots of Americans here today. Emily from Michigan, Rhiannon Chow from Italy, welcome. Linda from Texas, Vera also from Czechia, Vicky from Plymouth, we have Gail from North Carolina, Cindy, and we have Margaret from the UK, Else from Norway, and Michael also from Texas, and Lorella from Italy, Danilo also from Italy. We have these countries that are all about learning from you, Jessica.
That's fantastic.
We have Chapman, Wendy, Chick, Shirley, we have Maite from Barcelona, and then we have Anna from Riga, Latvia, beautiful, and Chris from Northern California, and Jan from the Netherlands, always fun when there are new countries popping in, and we have Inger, who says good evening from Sweden, and we have Ludwig from Belgium, Ayla from Finland, Ulu, and Laila from Norway, Ingela from Sweden, Christine from New Mexico, Irene, Eniko is from New York, Yvette, Angelique, Klaus from Germany, Judith from Budapest, Janice from Long Island, Mary from Seattle, and Claudia from Mexico. We have people from Spain, Argentina, many parts of the US, many parts of Canada, many parts of Europe. Yeah, beautiful. England, Barcelona, lots of people tuning in. And now there are so many of them, I cannot read them all. We have hellos from Quebec and Bulgaria, Latvia, Portugal, and Denmark. And all of those of you who are just tuning in, warmest welcome. And me and Jessica are in completely different time zones, but we are both super excited to be here. And we're super happy to have you here, Jessica. And I'm looking so much forward to everything you have to share. Every time I've spent it with Jessica is just so inspiring, and like it just opens up these parts of the brain where you were like, I thought I knew this, but it has just dropped deeper. And it's just so I hope that everyone is super excited.
I love hearing that. Thank you.
And because I'm gonna read lots of slides explaining who we are, what we're gonna do, before all of that, I would love to hear you share, Jessica, why you are here today and what you are excited to share with all of us.
Absolutely. So I assume most of you probably know, if you signed up for this workshop today, that we are re-releasing a course that I did for Artefacto, and we're including a new mentorship program, which we have never done before, and I'm very excited for both of these. Some of you who are here early probably heard the tail end of me telling Hannah this already. This course that I did that we're going to be talking about is really some of the teaching I am most happy with how it's come out. I'm a perfectionist. I'm never happy with anything I do. And I really feel great about how that came together. It's 15 hours of what to me is really the core of what I apply to my work that has made it as successful as it is so far, and what I see students needing. And so it's very repetitive hopefully it's not repetitive in a boring way, but it really keeps hitting those same issues, so you really have a chance to change your approach with some of the foundations in whatever way suits your style. I love how the course came together, and the price point is, I would charge so much more if I were teaching it. And I wouldn't say that if it wasn't genuinely true. So I feel very good about putting that out to the public, because you're getting a steal of a deal in my opinion, for what I'm able to share. And the mentorship is just going to be the next level of taking beyond what you learn in the course into your own work and getting to work with me on your paintings in your style from what you've learned, not just what's in the course, but your own stuff. So we can really help launch you into your things. And that's what I love. I love helping people feel better about themselves and their painting, the work that they're doing, and get where they want to be. So that's probably the very long answer, but I'm very excited about that. And that's what we get to talk about today.
Thank you so much for that. We had one comment which was, is it possible for you to raise your volume or your gain on your
Oh,
microphone?
I will try to talk louder. I don't know how to change
Because what I could do
microphone
is
volume.
I can also lower my voice and then there will probably be a better match. So hopefully that will
Oh,
be a
okay.
better balance for everyone.
Sure.
I've just changed
My
my,
microphone is right here, and
yeah,
I don't,
I
that would
hear
be
you
something
very,
to
very
learn.
well.
I don't have great tech skills, just,
I
I
think
mean,
this is
easy.
more than enough. If everyone feel that you hear us good enough, please write a yes in the chat so that we can feel comfortable moving forward. And
Yeah.
while you guys hopefully write a yes in the chat, let me start reading and explaining what we're gonna do today. Because today we are having a live online workshop from flat to dimensional, mastering value in watercolor with Jessica L. Bryant. Lots of people talk about value. Few people explain it in a way that just makes so much sense. And Jessica is so well articulated. You are in for a treat. And we have lots of yeses in the chat. Thank you so much for that. That is super, super helpful. Thank you for all of your yeses. Yeah. Okay? I'm gonna take those yeses as a yes, and let's move on. And since I know that there are some people who are completely new to Artefacto, we're gonna take a moment to just welcome you to this environment, this particular space that we have together. So where are you from? Lots of you have already shared that. And our next question is, how long have you been with Artefacto? So please write new if you have not been with other Artefacto before, and write the amount of time if you are returning to this environment. And while you do that, let me just share what Artefacto is all about. This is one of very many webinars, and as you can see, there are world-renowned masters that are experts in their specific different fields, and you're gonna see what Jessica is an expert at in just a few moments. And this is something that Artefacto shares with people from all around the world for free, and then with in-depth courses that you of course pay for. And these experiences, we have free opportunities to learn every single week, and there are so many beautiful courses. And today we have 2 opportunities to learn from Jessica. And depending on where you are on your journey, different parts of what Artefacto has to share will resonate the best for you. So let me just read the chat to see. We have lots of new people and also lots of people who are returning. So let me just, while I share that, please share where you are on your journey. So number 1, if you're exploring watercolor, finding joy in the process, learning the basic fundamental techniques, or if you're at number 2, the build stage, where you want to improve systematically, understand why things work, and get expert feedback to really get to that next level. Or if you're at number 3, the create stage, where you're developing your own personal style and your artistic voice, stepping into being an artist even more. Or if you're at number 4, where you are already where you want to be, you share, you're exhibiting, selling, teaching, living as an artist. So now, while you do that, let me read some. Welcome those of you who are here. Welcome for the first time to Deborah. Welcome back to Natalia and Judith. Welcome for the first time to Jude. Welcome Tanya. Welcome Anya. Annie, and Svenja, who are all new. Rui has been with us many times. Welcome back. Ingela is new. Welcome, and Maite as well. Angelique and Albina and Herb and Vera. All of you guys are new. Warmest welcome. Lots of new people in the chat. Beautiful. And Claudia since 3 years. Beautiful. So many. I'm not able to read all of them because there are so many of you. Thank you so much for sharing. And I can see here on the stages that we have ones, twos, and threes, twos and threes and ones. 1.5, that's a perfect answer. 2 and 3, 1 and 2. So many people are here, around here, or around here. And then we have a few 3 and 4s as well. So we have all of these levels here with us today. And at Artefacto, we have pre-recorded courses where you can learn at your own pace, which is perfect for the discovering stage. And there you get to explore, enjoy, learn basics, and also learn at your own pace. And then we have the build stage, where we have programs with feedback, where you have structured learning and also professional guidance. Then we have the create stage. Here is where we have mentorships, where you work directly with the master, him or herself. In this case, it's going to be Jessica who opens up this beautiful opportunity, where you get to learn even deeper. So it's like you can go from that build stage into developing your personal style, learning how to use your own references, how to think like an artist, and all of these things. Then we also have career programs and retreats and courses that explore that exhibition part and the selling part and creating your brand as an artist and all of that. So there will be something for all of you, and we have both, I would say, here and here that we are sharing today. And today's focus is designed for the build and create levels. And this is for you if you already paint, but you want to understand why things work. That is where Jessica comes in, being such a beautiful expert. And you feel that you can follow along with tutorials, but you struggle with your own subjects. And if you're ready for honest feedback to break through, then that create stage will be perfect for you. And at this month at Artefacto, there are also other things happening, as you can see. So if you want, you can take a screenshot and make sure to join us for those other events as well. But now let's talk about today. So I would like to hear your voice in this, Jessica, in just sharing why value is the key to improving your paintings at any level. Very briefly now, but just a start for us before we dive in.
Yeah, many of you have probably heard the phrase that color gets the credit, or color gets the glory, but value does the work. And it's just so true. We learn as little kids to perceive the world through color. You know, when we're toddlers, we're taught to sort things by color. We're very color driven. But the truth is, every color has a value. Value is how dark or light something is. And if you look just at your palette, if you have your paints out next to you, some are lighter and some are darker. And the trick as artists is we weren't taught as little kids to identify value when we're looking at color, how dark or light something is. And so some things are obvious and pretty easy, and some things get really tough to tell the difference, or the brightness of the color can trick us into thinking the value is something other than what it is. And the reason it matters is because our brains are processing value right with the color. And that value structure really is what holds everything together. Just like a black and white photograph looks just like the subject, only the color is missing. Same thing. Your colors could be spectacular and beautiful and clean and luscious and wonderful, but if your value structure isn't supporting the color underneath, if your values are off, it's not going to feel quite right. It's going to feel a little bit off, and you'll think it's something with the color, or you'll think it's maybe your drawing or something else. And so often it really just comes down to the values a little bit off.
Thank you so much for that introduction to what we're going to do today, and also what you are going to focus on, both in the tutorials that we're going to do today, and also if you want to work deeper with Jessica, there will be a chance to do that as well. So here's what we're going to do today. We're going to explore value, learn how to analyze your reference before you paint, watch Jessica demonstrate her approach on a simple subject, and then at the end we have a Q&A session with Jessica, and we're gonna begin to understand the thinking system that separates some things off from this works, just as she just shared with us. And we have a special announcement at the end regarding us opening the first ever live mentorship program with Jessica. We only have 20 spots, so if this is something you already now know, make sure to join straight away as soon as that opportunity pops up, so that you get to be part of this. And if you stay with us until the end, you will get the details. And as long as you are here with us while we're still having this conversation and still streaming live, that will be the absolute best offer for you. So this workshop will last for about 2 hours, probably a little bit more. And please use the chat, cheer each other on, and help each other out, ask your questions. I will make sure to ask as many as we have time for during the workshop, and also at the very end. And if this is your first time with us, please feel that there's no pressure to paint along with Jessica at her pace. You can always watch to to the recording that you will have access to for a limited time. Yeah, so make notes, ask questions, paint along if you want to, but with no pressure, because Jessica is gonna do that at her professional pace, and it can be very tricky to keep up with an artist doing their own thing, watching what she's doing and what you're doing and what she's doing and what you're doing, just so that you are prepared for how this will work. Now we have a question for those of you who are here today. Do you find yourself facing any of these challenges? We have A, my painting doesn't turn out the way I imagined it. I had a clear vision, but somewhere along the way it shifted. It didn't really get all of the way there. Or B, I get lost in details and I lose the big picture. Or C, I keep making the same mistakes painting after painting. Or D, sometimes I nail it, sometimes I don't, and I don't know why. Or E, I get feedback like lovely, but never what's actually wrong or what's actually that particular thing that would change things. Please share in the chat what of these challenges resonate the most with you. C and E, says Samantha, so making the same mistakes, needing that specific feedback. We have lots of D's, so the feeling that yay sometimes, and then why, huh? I think everyone who has worked with watercolor can feel that way, because it's such a process that something needs to happen before it just clicks. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't. And all of the above, we have A's and C's, making the same mistakes, doesn't turn out the way. Thank you so much for sharing, everyone. C and D, all of them. B, get lost in details. Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's gonna help. It's gonna help us if we have just opened up our minds for these things. Now we're soon gonna learn from Jessica. She's gonna share exercises and specific demonstrations with us. Yeah, before she does, I would love to introduce you all to her. Yeah, Jessica L. Bryant is a signature member of the American Watercolor Society, the National Watercolor Society, the Northwest Watercolor Society, and the Idaho Watercolor Society. And she's an 8-time artist in residence with the US National Park Service. So she has spent so much quality time exploring beautiful scenes in nature, including several places that you see here: Rocky Mountain, Joshua Tree, Western Arctic National Parklands, and her work has been exhibited internationally and featured in numerous publications. And here we have one of them, and there is so much beauty in this one, blending artistic expression with a deep understanding of cultural and geological context. And something that you have also shared, and that we also know about you, Jessica, is that you're so passionate about art, about nature, and creating this beautiful experience and sharing your moments in nature with other people. And you have chosen watercolor. Would you like to share just a few words of why you love sharing these beautiful places with other people through the medium of watercolor?
Medium watercolor is probably a longer story. I hated watercolor with a passion. Life events, different things happened. I wound up in a watercolor class when my children were very small and I needed something that was just mine to do, thinking I hate that, but it's on the weekend and I could do it, and I need to get back to art and whatever. And I just fell in love. And the things that I had hated about watercolor, I loved at that stage in life, because it takes your intellect. You have to be focused and engaged and thinking with the medium. And I needed that so badly with just little kids at home. It's so rewarding when you understand it, and you know, for me, as somebody who always loved the sciences, I loved everything. For me, it's a medium that really you get to use everything, right? You're using art, you're using observation, you're using these critical thinking skills, scientific understanding. If you grasp how water and paint work together, and surface tension on your paper, and like there's just so much you can overanalyze and think about with the medium. I love that about it. It takes more than just, I mean, not that you have to put all that into it. You certainly don't. But I love that it's a venue for me to think that way. And then sharing work is just, you know, we're all sharing this experience of being alive on this planet, and it's a pretty spectacular place. And I don't know, there's something just neat about every individual human and every individual place, and we can't all go to all of the places. And these are our natural habitats, and our modern world has most of us spending not very much time outdoors in nature, and I think we need it. And so painting it gives you a chance to kind of be present with it as you're working. And not that I expect that all of you are landscape painters. By no means the information I share applies to absolutely every subject. Uh, but I just keep being drawn to landscape for that reason. And, you know, it's, you got to do what you love doing. And this is what I love doing.
Absolutely. And as you can hear, probably, another thing that Jessica is passionate about is sharing this with other people. And she has had students from very low ages to over 90, like it's a big, or at least 89 or whatever that was, I don't remember, but there's a big range of people who Jessica has loved working with, and now we get to take part of that. And it's all about someone finding those keys to help them unlock what they want to do. And something that you always share, Jessica, is that this isn't about copying my approach. It's about helping you understand how you want to paint. And that is something that we can see here in some examples from your students, where the expression is so different and it's just so beautiful.
Yeah.
And we also have had over 100 students at Artefacto joining Jessica's program. Yeah, it's beautiful to read and see all of the progress, super inspiring. And something that Artefacto has found out from asking and exploring these topics with 20,000 students is that lots of artists experience a sense of a plateau, that feeling of growing to a certain point and then staying stuck, even though you continue practicing. And we've also discovered that students who get expert feedback improve so many times faster than those who learn alone and don't get those specific insights that they need to just reach that next level. So the difference is not talent, and it's not always how many hours you spend. It's often about getting those specific things that you need to reach that next level. So a couple of questions for Jessica. We have the first one here. Was there a turning point in your journey where something clicked and changed how you approach painting?
You know, I was thinking about this last night, and I can't say that I don't have any memory of there being a moment. It's more like in hindsight, I see that, oh, I just had like a little burst of growth there, like something kind of, it clicked, but it kind of clicks more over time. Like you grasp an idea, but it takes time to process it and apply it into your work and see it showing up. And eventually you realize, oh, something has shifted and I'm grasping something that I didn't grasp before. And that's, you know, that's constant. I hope that's always constant. I mean, I think if you're engaged in thinking this is lifelong, there's no end point in improvement and exploring what it is that you want to do. And I know for myself in my own work, I always feel like I'm so far away from getting there, whatever there is. I don't know. I don't think it exists. But I feel the same way that I hear all of my students talk. I don't feel any different, even with, you know, awards and prestigious shows and things. I still feel like there's so much I haven't figured out, and there's so much room for growth. And you know, we're all in this boat together.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And just before we continue, if I have lowered my own volume or my gain, if this is better or worse, please write that in the chat so that I know that I am helping, so that I didn't turn myself too quiet. And we have one more question for you, Jessica, and that is that many artists, they are learning and getting good at following tutorials step by step, but they struggle with their own references, planning it all by themselves. How can your method help artists become more independent?
Yes, this is something that frustrates me that I've seen in most of my students. I've had a lot of students over the years who have taken a lot of workshops with other people, and most of their experiences have been to go to a workshop and the artist has chosen a reference and you paint along with the artist on that reference, and you've probably made a really nice painting because you had this direction the whole way through. And then you finish it and the workshop's done and you go home and then you go to do your work, and somebody else isn't choosing your reference for you. Nobody's telling you how to do the things, and what you did get for instruction applied to that particular one. And unless an instructor is really helping you understand, or unless you yourself already have figured out how to understand how to take little components and apply them to your work, it's kind of like you're doing two different things. Like you can go and produce a painting under direction, but then when you're trying to do it on your own, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of relationship there. So things that I try to always do, in just about every time I do any kind of workshop, unless it's really targeted and focused, like today's, because we only have a short amount of time together. Typically, I really work on how do you choose a reasonable subject? How do you choose a subject that you can be successful with wherever you're at, whether you're a beginner or very experienced advanced painter? That's a big part of it, is before you even start putting paint to paper, it's what is your plan? What are you going to do? What is, did you choose a reference that has things in it that you don't even know how to handle, and then you're just assuming you'll figure it out as you paint? Well, that's high risk for all of us. So I spend time on that, and I spend time on the things we're doing today with understanding how to analyze and look at what you're seeing, not just painting like me, but if you can really grasp some of these foundations, that applies to anything you choose to do. And then with the thing that we have today with this new mentorship, that is really a game changer, because you will get to work with me on your own images, your own reference material, your own paintings. So it'll be like you're working on your own at home, but you do actually have a chance to get some feedback from somebody based on everything done in this course. So if you've already taken the course, you'll be able to take just the mentorship. But the course really is like laying the foundation of grasping what we're going to be talking about throughout. And what I think is really the key stuff, no matter who you are, how you paint, what your subject is, what your style is, all of it.
And one final question before we start with the demonstration part, where we're gonna see your method in action, is what is your approach when giving feedback to students? How do you help them see what they cannot see yet?
Yeah. Uh, I cater to each individual, and everybody's different. And so I've worked with so many people that there are kind of different ways we tend to approach things. So I can usually pick up pretty quick on what somebody is. I can look at what someone has done and I can see what they're grasping and what they're seeing and what things are maybe not quite clicking yet. So depending on what it is, I like to give really carefully articulated written feedback. And I you can probably tell already, I'm somebody who kind of goes overboard on the content with things. And so it's pretty robust written feedback. And I will also, if it's just a visual issue where somebody really can't see the difference, I will take like a screenshot of their painting, put it in Photoshop, and do a side by side. I'll take your reference, make it black and white, take your painting, make it black and white, and then we just look back and forth. How are you seeing these things? And it doesn't mean that you're trying to copy your reference exactly as it is. That's impossible anyways. But you get to choose, the level of detail and all those kinds of things. But those larger shapes, are you seeing the value accurately? And you can always make changes. I just really like to help students get to a place where anything that you're doing to interpret or change what's in your reference is done by choice, and not because you didn't figure it out or you couldn't understand it or you saw it wrong or something like that. So we spend time looking at just direct comparison. And if you have a good reason for having wanted to change something, that's fantastic. I have no problem with things changing. It doesn't have to be, like, we're not trying to be robots or AI, exactly copying something, by no means. But just learning how to see what you're actually seeing is a skill, and it takes practice and feedback to get there.
And we had one question in the chat, which
Yeah.
was regarding now we've seen landscapes, and the pre-recorded program is all about landscapes. So the
Yeah.
mentorship, will that be also about landscapes, or can it
It
be
can be
about any
anything.
subject?
It can be any subject you like. I mean, we can work in abstract too. It's really, my opinion, it's all the same. It's all about shapes that have a value, have a color, have a, well, if you take my course, you'll hear me go on about that. Everything in the world, whether it's everything has an abstract design. Everything we look at is an abstract. It's just that certain combinations of shapes we give names to, like chair or dog or what have you. But as an artist, if you can train your eye to see just shapes of value and shapes of color, everything is so much easier to do. That's a big ask. It's hard to learn to see that way, and probably a lifelong endeavor to get there. But we're going to be talking about that some in just a minute.
Thank you so much for that. And what Jessica approach is all about is that you learn a thinking system, learn why, not just how to paint, and also having found value as a foundation and seeing that as the invisible structure that makes everything in the painting work, and also exploring two different styles in one similar process, loose and detail, so that you get to choose how loose versus how detailed slash realistic you want to create in your paintings. And also learning objective self-assessment so that you understand what's working without needing to guess, and gaining that sense of understanding so that you create more independence and can paint much more safely, securely, confidently from your own references. And if you are now ready to gain insights from Jessica, even more practical and less talk and more on the paper, please write a yes in the chat and watch closely, because this is going to be a mini version of her complete method. So let's dive into part 1, where Jessica will share how to analyze the reference, identify major value shapes, and create a quick value sketch step by step. So let's dive in.
All right. So jumping right in, hopefully you saw the reference image that we're using today. This is a stand of trees. We're not going to do a full painting. I chose just a group of trees as a great example because this is something I hear a lot from people, that trees are hard. And I will make the argument that no subject is inherently harder than any other subject. Just some are more complex. They take longer. It's more time consuming to paint them the way you're expecting them to be. So it's about patience and how much you can handle investing the time into it. It doesn't make it harder or easier. It's just, I mean, it can feel harder or easier, right? If you're not somebody who has a lot of patience and you don't like to paint that way, then it feels hard. And then that's probably not a great subject for you. But there are ways to simplify complex subjects and make them easier to approach. So this is what we're going to look at. And we'll start here. We're going to do this kind of in two sections. So we'll start by just looking at what's actually here. So thinking about the observation component of this. When we look in color and we're looking at a group of trees, the tendency that most of us have is to try to figure out where the edges are of each of these trees so that when we go to paint it or go to draw it, we are figuring out the very detailed edge of where each of these trees are. Even if you're aiming to paint in a more loose style, you're still, most of us still are just drawn to try to figure that out. Here's the thing though, figuring out the edges of these trees is not going to convey the sense of what looking at this feels like. If you look at this, and this is a little smaller on your screen than if you have the printout, which is great. I'm backed out a little bit on purpose because it's easier to see this a little further away. When we're backed out, what you really see is a clump of green, mostly kind of the same green. There's some small variations, but it's very similar green throughout. And then there's some darks and lights. And it looks really complicated because if you look up close, there are so many tiny little shapes of light and dark and all the values in between. And where do you even begin with something like this, right? And I think that's part of why we end up going straight to what can I control, which is if I can find the edges of those trees, I can make them look like trees, except that that's not what this looks like. We can't see the edges. When we just glance at this, you don't see where one tree starts and another ends until we get to the tops. And so really, and I gave this to you in black and white and in grayscale as well. So in grayscale, looking compared to color, this takes out the color and we're looking just at light or dark. How light is it? How dark is it? And if we look at this main clump of trees here, those values are pretty close. This is not a wide range of values. If we take a a value chart. So this is 9 values. There's 3 light, 3 medium, 3 dark values, and you can make these as a reference for yourself. If I take this value chart and I look at here, there's nothing in the light values. Even the lightest values in here are closer to a middle value when I look up close. Those are maybe out of 9, that's maybe like a 4. And the darkest values I see here are not really all that dark. Maybe we're into 7s. So my entire value range in this section is just from like 40 to 70%. It's not that wide of a value range. And that can make this feel even harder to paint because now you're challenging your brain to look at things and keep them subtle. And what our brains are really good at is noticing differences and exaggerating those differences. It's part of how we can tell each other apart. If you are somebody who paints a lot of portraits or draws a lot of portraits, you've probably figured this out. We all look almost the same. If you really get into looking at facial features, most of us, it comes down to like a few centimeters of difference between the width of an eye or the spacing of the nose to eyes or different things. But our brains are, we need to be able to tell each other apart. It helps us socially, of course, navigate the world. And so we learn how to exaggerate the differences of what we see so that we can identify each other very easily. And so the same kind of thing happens here. We learn to see in a cultural way that helps us live our lives, to be safe, to have social connections, all of those kinds of good things. But as artists, when we're trying to draw or paint, that kind of works against us because we're trying to exaggerate things that are not exaggerated. And you can use that. Sometimes exaggerating things on purpose makes a great effect that you love. And sometimes exaggerating things, not on purpose, makes something that you can't stand. So there's no right or wrong or things to always do or never do in art, in my opinion. It's understanding this kind of full range of what you have control over and then deciding how you want to apply it to the thing that you're wanting to make, whatever that is. So in this case, we've got this narrow range of values. So how are we going to handle that? And how are we going to see that? So one thing I like to just point out is we can simplify this even further. I did this just in a simple image manipulation app. And you just take an image. You can take a color image, probably your phone, if it can take photographs. Probably came with software to adjust photographs. You can probably make your color photograph black and white. If you don't already do that, that's a great tool with your painting. Take a photograph of your painting, make it black and white, and look at how you're seeing the values in your painting. Sometimes that is the biggest help in identifying areas where it doesn't feel right. You'll see, oh, I have very little contrast in that area, but in reality, it feels like it's heavy contrast, and I wasn't seeing that. And once you have an image changed to black and white, you can take the contrast. Usually there's a contrast bar. And if you bring the contrast way up and bring the brightness up a little bit, you can get yourself to something like this where you're just seeing black or white. So if I was going to do a very basic value study, black on my white paper, just a one value study, this is at least how the camera is perceiving the basic value structure that we're seeing here. And if you squint, probably you can kind of see where those shapes are. And the reason I have this is not because you're supposed to try to paint like this. This just helps us see where are these darkest value shapes, what is happening in this very complex area. So looking at that very complex area and trying to understand this very detailed, very chaotic feeling section and how would I even begin to do that in painting, we're going to think as simply as we can. So if we were going to make this into, say, a paint by number, and I said, let's start with just trying to identify 3 values in this space, the lightest, the darkest, and a middle value within these trees. I bet all of you, if I gave you a marker, a Sharpie, and said, outline the shape of the darkest value you see, and you're going to combine some values together because really there's probably an infinite number of different values in this area. So just going kind of quick, if we look at what are the darkest shapes, we're going to get into something kind of in here. And I'm thinking ahead to knowing that I'm going to need to save my middle and my light value. So I'm trying to decide what I think is my darkest. Maybe that's darkest. we're not going to do this whole thing, but hopefully you get the idea here. I would be willing to bet that every one of you is capable of doing this. And it might take you a little while, and that's okay. Doing this is, if you really struggle with value and seeing value, doing this is really a great use of your time because you're training your brain to see these shapes. And training your brain to see these shapes over time, you'll get faster and faster at it, and you'll be able to make these assessments on the fly while you're painting instead of having to really agonize over things ahead of time. So I could do this through this whole area. I'm looking at, yes, I could make teeny tiny shapes. I don't want to make teeny tiny shapes. I want to try to look at the main, I'm a little careful with my edges, but the main larger dark shapes, I guess that kind of moves to a medium value somewhere in there. Got another here. So we would call those, if I'm just doing 3 values, let's call that a 3. 1 will be my lightest, 2 will be my mid value. You get the idea here, I hope. So I want to keep us moving through. So we do this in great detail in the course, multiple times with different images, and then we build out into looser and more detailed paintings. Sometimes we're doing versions of both, a loose and a more detailed version of the same thing. So you get the idea. So then if I were to come in and outline my lightest lights, we can do that too, right? Those would be my 1s, and everything in between would be my 2s. So the first step to translating this that I'm doing the course, and I highly suggest anybody when you're going to do a painting, even if you just spend 5 minutes on this, is do some value studies. And a value study is just identifying a limited number of main value shapes. That's all it is. And you can choose how you do that. You could do just dark versus light, depending on your subject. Just dark versus light is not the best approach, in my opinion, for this one, because of the nature of this mass. You're not going to get a whole lot of information to help your painting from that. Let's do a 3 value study. So dark, light, medium. Now, the key thing here is with a complex subject like this, let's find that color image again. Let's explain how this is kind of just a chaotic mess of very low contrast value shapes. What really makes this feel like trees is the upper edges of the shapes here, because the middle and lower edges all blend into the surroundings, with a few exceptions. We've got rocks, but that really is more bringing the rock forward. It's not telling us a lot about the tree shape, really. So these edges are going to tell us more about what this subject is than anything happening in the middle here. In fact, we could get really crazy, wildly simplistic with the middle. If we have these shapes well articulated, it will tell us what's going on down here. Oh, one other thing I wanted to point out with these, since we're talking about shape, we've got this large shape of, again, low contrast, very limited range of values happening in here, and it's the articulated higher contrast shape at the top edge of this, these smaller shapes. We'll call them trees. I like to talk more in the abstract just to try to separate from thinking about subject matter, because if you think of it as tree, you're thinking green and it has brown bark and it has all these things you think you know about trees. And that, more often than not, is going to make this whole process harder to do. It's so much easier if you can just think, what kind of a shape is it? What is the look of that shape? And just focus on that. And so we're looking at the top edge of these shapes to really kind of communicate what the subject tree is. And then in this middle space, it's low contrast and a limited range of values, but there is some value range in there, right? So when we get into painting this, we are going to have some shapes in that space. So then what's really important to pay attention to, especially if you want to paint on the looser side and not so tight and detailed, but I mean, you've got to get this if you're tight and detailed too. What kind of shapes are those? What's the nature of those shapes? Are they vertical? Are they horizontal? Are they rounded? Are they more square? Are they angled? Are they lumpy? What kind of shape are you actually seeing happen? So when I was making these dark shapes with my Sharpie and outlining these, what kind of shapes do we have? These are generally pretty horizontal, aren't they? Those darks in there, pretty horizontal. And sure, we can get into analyzing like, oh, what's going on? It's trees and the branches. Some trees, they'll angle upwards, some they'll angle downwards. You could get into all that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that it's a tree. It doesn't matter that they're branches. None of that matters. What matters is it's a shape and it's darker and it's more horizontal and it's got kind of rounded, pointier, but rounded, pointier kinds of shapes. They're uneven. So we don't want to start making shapes. We don't want to start thinking, oh, tree, and it's just they're all going to be, you know, the same shape. Or we don't want to think, oh, tree, and there's branches, and each branch has needles coming out. And I've seen so many students try to paint every last needle. Well, can you see every last needle? No. If you paint every last needle, is it going to feel like the experience of looking at this? No. If you really want to anyways, that's absolutely your choice and you get to do that. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. But if your goal is to make this feel like this, making shapes like that is not the way to get here. And so back to where I was before with the value study. And again, I highly recommend if you're trying to figure out values or just trying to ensure that you are actually seeing values accurately, this is the best tool. If you're working from photographs, make a black and white copy. Keep them side by side while you're painting. And periodically, when you think you've got an area done or at your final value, take a photograph, make your photograph black and white, and compare it to your reference and just see what you're seeing. It's how we train ourselves to see what we're seeing more accurately. Again, you are always allowed to make changes. I would just like to see you make those changes on purpose instead of on accident. And actually, I should go bigger than that. So if we're looking at doing a quick value study of this little section, I might start in the middle just because this is quicker and easier. If I'm wanting to go quick, oh, I should do this with paint. My apologies. I'm just going to take some neutral tint to do this. And I like neutral tint just because it's nice and dark. And I keep it in a little cup ready to go for really dark areas. And I will use this as an under painting sometimes because it's a staining pigment that doesn't shift. I will use it sometimes to drop in darkest darks and keep track of my shapes, but that's, I'm not going to get to demonstrating that today. Hannah, how are we doing on time? Do I have a few more minutes here?
I'm loving it. Please
Okay, so we're
continue.
okay?
Yes, yes, we are.
So there is no one right way to do anything you're doing in any of art, honestly. Some things will work better for you than they will for somebody else. And some things will be harder for you than they will be for somebody else. So when you're watching an instructor like me, take the things, but if you have a better approach that works for you or clicks with your brain better, that's how you should do that. So when we're doing a value study, you can start with your lights, you can start with your darks, you can start with your mid values. There's no right or wrong. Just because you watch somebody demonstrate it one way doesn't mean that's going to be the best way for you. So I just like to say that up front. For some people, starting in more of a mid value, so I will do this, can be a little bit easier because you're feeling like you have a sense of where those shapes are. So if I start with mid value, and I may choose to darken some of these, again, this is not trying to make it look exactly right. This is trying to articulate the main sense of what's going on in this image. I'm just doing verticals so I have something to keep track of where I am. So this whole area, that's a little wider. Again, I'm kind of using these two outside trees as my barrier, and I'm going in between that area. And this is going to be wet, so this is going to be a challenging example, but that's okay. You'll get the idea. The idea with the value study is not that you're making a beautiful painting. It's that you're getting a chance to practice the shapes that you're seeing, practicing the scene in the first place, practicing those shapes and getting a sense of how you want this to apply in your painting. That should be a little bit taller. So I'm looking at where do those upper shapes come down into this one kind of mass of a shape, something like that. And then these are actually a little bit wider, so I'm gonna widen those out. I just wanted to have a sense. I will sometimes do verticals with trees just to have a sense of where those are going. But you know, with watercolor, we have to be careful because it's transparent. So depending on how dark you're going with those shapes, you might end up getting textures and things that you don't like. So I wouldn't necessarily do that approach in my painting. This is a quick study. So I've got my lightest value in. If we look in here, And again, if here's another trick, if seeing values is really hard for you, you can make yourself a little shortcut helper. Take a piece of white paper, or if you have scraps of your watercolor paper, even better, and use like a little X-Acto knife, or if you're a crafter and you have little square punches, you can punch one. Isolate the shape that you're looking at to identify what the value of that shape is. And this is another great way to look at, okay, that looks like the lightest area. And if this is the darkest area, how different are those two values that I'm looking at? You know, they're very close to the same. So I can look at, if this is my lightest, how am I doing? I am far lighter in my study than I am in my reference. Can you all see that, hopefully? So realistically, this whole thing should get darker if I'm trying to practice matching this. And I could do that now. I could wait. I'm going to choose to wait. I want to make sure that you can really see what I'm seeing, and I'm going to exaggerate just a little bit in some of this. Watercolor being watercolor, we have the luxury of, at the very end, if we want a little bit darker, we can just do a quick wash over the top. And if it's a quick, gentle wash without wiping the brush, you're not going to change any of the underlying shapes. You'll just soften, tone down the value of that. So now I'm going to look for where are my darkest darks, right at this edge here. And I'm going to start with vertical here, because when I squint my eyes, what I'm seeing is generally vertical shapes coming in through here. Those darks are overall more vertical. It's only when I start looking with detail that I see the smaller shapes have this horizontal that I was mentioning. So this stuff is complicated. There's multiple layers of things happening depending on how you look at it. So from a distance, these shapes are going to look generally vertical. We're seeing the shadows along the sides. Like when you're looking at a hillside, you'll see the shadows on one side of the tree. This is an overcast day, so there's not really shadows, but even just there's still some shadow or some light and dark. So we've got a lot of main vertical, but then there's also the detail comes a little bit horizontal. This is a value study. I'm not trying to make a beautiful finished painting. Got to keep that in mind, because my tendency is to love on all of the detail and really dig into this always, because I love it. If you've seen my work, that's kind of obvious. But it's a study. So that's not my goal here. My goal is not to make it look exactly the same. My goal is to make it look the same when I squint back and forth. So my darkest darks are probably an okay value. My lightest lights are way too light, and my mediums are way too light. That's kind of darker too. So let's get a medium value going here. And one of the struggles when you look at something like this, because it's complex and there's a lot of small shapes in here, how do you do a quick study when you're seeing all this complexity? You have to look at the overall, which is really, really hard to do. As I'm looking at this, it looks to me like the edges, there's lighter edges and a darker center in this shape, which is right about in here. So I probably need my middle values to come down the middle and kind of the outside edges of that. I'm sort of softening as I go. And then all of this kind of disappears. So I just have a wet brush now. I'm just trying to make, oh, I just got rid of, well, whatever. That's fine. This darkest dark, I'm going to shift this shape just a little bit. I know this is a study. I'm giving you a really poor example right now, because look at me going into the detail, and I said this was going to be a quick study. Stop. So if this is you, trust me, I understand you. Because I didn't want to do that, I'm just going to soften all of this right now, because it shouldn't be that light anyways. And this whole area shouldn't be quite that light either. That's all a bit darker. This should be a little bit darker because it's quick. So I abandoned my detail. I softened it out. I'm going back to the original purpose here, which is just to give us a rough side by side of how, like a first go, let's say, of really looking at what's happening in these shapes. So this would be ideally under 5 minutes that you would spend on something like this. If this felt really complicated, then you might come in and do this with a little bit more detail, like I was starting to try to want to do, where we articulate some of these edges a little bit more. I will, when doing something like that, I will use my finger to keep track of where I am. If I've got something complex and I want to take the time to get it, I will come in here and make myself a little that's too dark. I will come in here and keep track of where I am and how far down I've come. Um, when it's a study, I do not usually draw first, but that doesn't mean that you can't. You absolutely, if drawing makes you more comfortable, if you haven't done a lot of drawing just with your brush. But you could also start drawing with just your brush because it's a great experience. And I'm using a fat 1-inch brush because this is not my final painting. This is me exploring the shapes that I see, figuring out how I'm going to handle this in my painting. And if I was doing this in my painting, my tendency would be to paint around and get the look of this individual tree that's in front here. And I might really want to put some time into that. But again, what do we actually see happening in this tree? I can't make out every branch and what for sure goes with that tree or a different tree. So I'm going to be really careful that I don't try to paint every single one of those branches because it's not going to feel right if I do. So, nope, I will save that till, sorry, I'm thinking out loud. We're going to have a part 2 with this demo, and I've got some ideas that I always change on the fly what I'm going to teach because, different things hit at different times. So still trying to keep this a little bit more simplified. This is meant to be just the top. I'm talking while painting, which always makes me do things I don't intend to do, which is great because then you get to watch somebody who supposedly knows what they're doing do it wrong or weird. Because we all are in that boat. So this is going just a little bit slower, really thinking about what these trees look like. Where am I at? That one, that one, that one, that one. This one's a little bit wider. But then notice how they come together into kind of a mass, right? We did this already over here. So we can slow down to try to really get a sense of what these shapes are, if that's helpful for you. Any practice, any value sketches or other practice work you do before a painting, there's nothing that you have to do or nothing that's going to, like, there's no way you have to do these things. I think it's really useful to pay attention to what works for you. What happens when you're in a painting? What kinds of things, if you feel like you do the same thing wrong over and over again, start taking notes. When you realize, oh shoot, I just did that and I know not to do that, but I just did it again, write it down. And just keep a going list of the kinds of the things that you forget, that you know better, but you forget. Because how much are we trying to think of all at once while we're painting? It is so much. There's so much to think of. Of course, you're going to forget some of it. Of course, the same things are going to happen that you're unhappy with. Make yourself a list. And before you start a painting, read through that list, look at your reference, and think, okay, what's most risky? What am I most likely to repeat in this that I don't want to do? And circle those things, write them down again, something, and just refer to that every time you come back to that painting. Read through those things again and remember, oh yeah, okay, I really want to pay attention to this area or how I handle this. Those also might be things that you try in a small little study before you start the actual painting. You can do whatever works for you is what you should do. Try different things. Try different kinds of studies, value studies, color studies, whatever you're working on, whatever feels hard for you to do, those are the things that you want to be practicing. Okay, then there's another kind of lighter area that's darker. So now I'm just doing the partial here. I'm looking at where my dark shapes are. And it is mostly vertical. I'm simplifying the shape that I see. So I'm right in here. And then inside. And it's not that we have to be perfect with every last shape. It's worth learning how to do that or how to be really close to what you see. It's worth learning how to do that, just like it's worth learning how to make an approximation of your whole painting with 20 brush strokes and really limit what it is that you're trying to do. It's worth trying everything and getting some experience and comfort with everything, because then when you come into your own painting, you have more choices. You have more options, more different ways of thinking, ways of looking, ways of handling the paint, that you can choose in the moment what's going to make this more successful for what you're wanting it to be. And I think a lot of us find our little comfort zone and we stay there because we're fearful that we won't be able to figure something else out, that it's too hard, that we're not good enough. None of this is beyond anybody's ability. Some things just take longer to figure out or longer to practice. And it it's all okay. It's okay to do things and have them turn out poorly for a while. That's okay. You don't have to show anybody else. Work on it for yourself. Analyze for yourself as if you're your own friend. Be nice to yourself. Um, think through what is it I was trying to do. If you can give yourself specific goals or instructions before you start a painting, it also helps you say, hey, I managed to do this and this really well, and those were the things I was trying to do. I'm not happy with how this turned out or how that turned out, but I wasn't focused on those. So it's okay because that wasn't what I was trying to do in this painting. Right. You seem kind of skipping around here and my lights are too light,
Let
but
me just check with
watercolor,
you, Jessica. What are the most important things to do in this part before the break, and then making sure to do those?
yep,
Because
I'm
we
just
have
about done. I am
perfect.
just about done with where I wanted to be. So this is kind of two examples for a complex subject like this. And if you take the course, you'll see much more straightforward, um, much more simple to approach subjects where we'll be looking at how to do very simplistic value studies. Um, this is a tough subject. That's why I chose this for here, is just to show you we will get to things that are tough like this in the course. But even something that seems really challenging, and challenging are things that are low contrast, high detail, messy and chaotic. That's going to be harder. That, or in watercolor, anything that's small light shapes on top of dark shapes is more time consuming. And this is just more time consuming if you really want it to feel like that, exactly as you see it. But point is, hopefully, I don't know if this is coming across very well, that you don't have to get every last detail in here to convey a sense of it. And we'll come back. These are meant as just studies to practice and kind of figure out what those shapes are doing before we come into a painting. So we'll come to that next.
Thank you so much for that. And we had a comment in the chat previously. I don't remember who it was or exactly what it was, but the gist of it was that something just clicked. There was
Oh,
this
good.
aha moment when you explained.
Excellent.
Yeah, so that is perfect. And will you do a color version of this in the
Yes.
next part?
Yes.
Perfect. So what we are doing now is that we're gonna give some time for this to be digested, and you can try this on your own, and we will talk more about how you can learn more from Jessica. And then after that, Jessica will demonstrate this in color, and we will see what is different from the approach that she just did, and the approach when we also want to add color to the equation. And now we've just experienced a mini version of what Jessica teaches. But one place where many artists get stuck is that they understand the concept, but when they try to apply it to their own work, their own references, they are not sure if they're doing it right, and it can be very tricky to just jump into a new subject with confidence. And that is why we have created two pathways to learn this more deeply. And the first one is a pre-recorded program, or a big course, in other words. The Master's Journey, a complete program that teaches you the thinking system. And this is perfect if you feel that this is something that you want to learn. You want to learn the steps, you want to deep dive into these things, and you want to feel like this is something that you own. This is information that is embodied and that you can use whenever you are encountering a new subject. And then if you already have this sense of, yes, I do understand this, I already have that understanding, then we also have the live mentorship, where you get direct feedback from Jessica on your own works. And you can also join both of these if you want to get the thinking system and the practice in this pre-recorded big program. And if you also want that next level feedback to see, hey, am I figuring this out correctly? And all of those questions that pop up along the way can be answered live if you join the live mentorship. So let's take a look. Jessica, are you available to
Yes.
to change your camera?
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
Because because we're gonna
Sorry, I
start
didn't
by
realize you could
exploring.
see the other.
We're gonna start by exploring the master's journey, watercolor from observation to personal style. This is a big one. 20 lessons, 15 hours, two complete paintings, each in two versions, loose and detailed, and lots of exercises. And let's just take a look at what this includes so that you can feel if this is a good fit for you, if this is what's going to make everything so much clearer for you. And we have a lot to cover, so let's take the most important things in the different modules. And I'm going to hand it over to you now, Jessica. In the
Yeah.
module one, we start with observation. First and foremost, what does that even mean? And we see that there's 3 hours and 25 minutes. So apparently we don't just watch some images. There is some particular exercises and practice included in this and for a specific reason. So tell us more.
Absolutely. Yeah, so you just got a little taste of it, and we start with much more simplistic subjects with larger, clear value shapes that have more contrast to them, which you can kind of see here in these small thumbnail images. The observation overview one in particular, it's a landscape of the river, but you can really see those nice blocks of kind of consistent value in those shapes. So I chose references that we kind of progress with complexity as we go, of course. But we start with things that are much more approachable than what I'm showing you here today. But it's the exact same thing with what is the value that I actually see happening despite the color, or with what value does that color actually have, and what am I seeing, and then can I replicate what I see accurately? And then tools for being able to double check your work, so that we're checking. You can check on your own, even though this is pre-recording. You don't have my direct help in the midst of this course. I'm giving you instructions on how you can check your work in a way to be more objective about how you're seeing what you're looking at. And then giving you some different options for things, because we're all different people. And if you hate drawing and hate sketching, there's so many different materials you could use to do these same things. If you don't want to do it in watercolor, you can use other materials to maybe make it more fun. Because really, what are we doing here in the first place? We should be enjoying what we're doing, or why are we even painting? So if this has become miserable for you, I would challenge you to think, I get to do this. I get to paint. Painting is fun. And remember that, and come back to what's fun about it, and make sure that you're doing that in your work. So I talk about that some too. But so we work through so many things, but we do, like I'm showing you today, we do these repeated learning value studies, learning to do them with a very limited number of values, increasing the number of values that we're looking at, getting into full grayscale, getting into color, simplified with color, and then also eventually getting to some pretty detailed paintings, as you can see in that lower right. Yeah, that one. That's one of the finished paintings we do, but we're looking at the same reference a few times leading up to that. So you're getting some practice with those shapes and getting some practice with the colors and having a chance to feel successful in the painting itself. And of course, the beauty of a pre-recorded course is that you can rewatch this as many times as you want for the rest of your life, or Artefacto's life. It's not just a one time I traveled to this workshop, got the information. It was overwhelming. There was so much I couldn't process it. I got a few things and then it's over, and I went home and I only got those few things. You can rewatch this so that as you progress and learn more wherever you're at right now, there's only so much we can hold into our brain. And I know, way too much information. But the idea is that gives you more to come back to later. So as some things start to really sink in, you'll come back and different things will sink in different ways. And the idea is that all of this is built in a way that you'll be able to translate it to your own reference images, whatever your subject matter is. I'm focused on landscapes because that's what I really love to do, but I've done plenty of portrait work, florals, all kinds of things. It's all the same. It's all just shapes that have a value and have a color. Truly, that's all we're doing, no matter what style we're working in, what subject matter we're working in. Abstract too, it's shapes that have value and probably have color. You don't need color. You could paint in black and white. And so we go through all of this. There's lots of exercises to work on, and we, again, build to the two finished, more detailed, to your own choice, more detailed paintings.
Thank you so much for that. And we can see that this is a skill building module. That is the main thing. We're building skills. But also when we watch this, why I circled this one as well is because I circled both of these ones and you were like, yeah, that one. But for me, this value study is so beautiful. And it's like, is it really a watercolor or is it a black?
Yeah.
It's actually, it has to be watercolor because I see it, but it works.
Because it's the right shapes, which is drawing, and then the right value, which is really what we focus on, because that's the hard thing. I think that's one of the hardest things for most of us because we don't learn it when we're little. Other things are easier and other people will talk about it. As adults, we hear this, oh, value is so important. Great. Well, what does that mean?
Yes, and building that skill is
Yeah.
changing everything. So I feel that this kind of a module can feel like, yeah, I'm doing exercises. But if we reframe that in our mind, it's like this is a skill building part, which
Yes.
enables the other lessons and the other insights, the other exercises to fall into place because we have prepared the ground for that. Then we will do this with more presence, which will be leveraged as we
Exactly.
continue painting.
And I think a lot of us feel like if we're going to do a painting, it's about doing that painting.
Mm.
And certainly I am. I am not somebody, I played a lot of instruments too, and I was never the kid that liked to practice scales or exercises. And I'm like that with painting. I do it in teaching, and it has been so good for me. That's one of the best things teaching has done for me, besides getting to work with other people and learning from everybody else. One of the things it's done is forced me to do these things that I'm explaining to everybody else. So if that's not you, I understand. And I would really encourage you to challenge yourself and go through these kinds of things, even if it's just for a limited amount of time. You don't have to want to do a value study for every painting. But again, it is skill building, like you said, Hannah. It's learning how to see that way and doing it's just like handwriting. There's all these studies that prove that handwriting helps you memorize things. Using your hand and doing these value studies and these different exercises is teaching your brain how to see and how to process what you're looking at in ways that will feed everything you do. And all of this is like practice towards that painting you're going to do. And as you all know who've worked in watercolor before, it's not the most forgiving medium. And there's so many times that we get halfway through a painting and realize, oh, if only I'd thought to handle it this way, this would have been so much better. And for me at this point, what I've realized in my own work is most of the work is before I start painting. Most of the work is understanding what's going to happen with this particular reference, what things I have to watch for, how I'm going to want to handle them and approach them. Once I start painting, I'm just filling in the blanks. Really, like I already have this developed concept, and it took me years to get there. But these are the kinds of things that I figured out along the way that hopefully can be a shortcut for everybody else.
And then we move into something that you call translation. So translation and value and color exercises. What is different and what is added into this module and this part of this big program?
So translation to me is the what we're doing. So when you're drawing and painting, essentially what we're doing is recording the experience of seeing, right? Recording the experience of observation of a subject, and how we're seeing it is what's happening in our painting. And no matter what your skill level is, if you've never painted before, there's value in that. It's really cool to see how somebody else processes something visually and puts it down on paper. But if you're here, you're probably here because you're wanting something more out of your paintings. But you're wanting to be, hopefully you're wanting it to be you, that you are showing through in your paintings, and it's about you and your style and how you see and how you process, and you want to like what it is that you're doing. I don't think there's any way for any of us to look at a photo, any human to look at a photo and copy it exactly. We are always interpreting. No matter how detailed and careful, there's always interpretation involved. So this idea that shows up so much in watercolor that you have to loosen up because that's how the medium works, etc. That's one way it works, but it's just a medium like any other. There aren't rules. You can handle it however you want to handle it. It's about exploring and figuring out what suits you. So every time you're looking at a subject and making a painting or a drawing, you're translating. You're taking in something that you've looked at, and then you're translating that observation into something on paper, right? A two-dimensional image that you've created. And there's so many different ways to do that. We all would sit down and paint the same thing in completely different ways. And that to me is what's beautiful about art, is you're getting to see each of our unique individual personalities show up in our work. And so I spend time talking about how we're translating what we're seeing, because there are so many options, and I don't want this to be something where you feel like you have to paint just like me, or that the way I do it is the right way or the better way, because no, it's just how I have to paint because it seems to be who I am.
Yeah.
So there's an example there with trees. And so I walk through like all these different ways that you could convey the sense of this tree: dry brush, wet on wet, the way you're using color, but we can still hold true to the values and the main shapes that has the same essential feel. And we're true to what our subject is in all the different ways we could do that.
Thank you so much for that invitation and explanation. And let's move on to the topic of simplification, where we see that value is a big part, drawing is a big part, and then a simplified painting and more detailed painting. So what happens in module 3?
So you're testing my memory because it's been
Yes,
a
of
little
course.
while since I looked at how we broke up the modules. But going off of the images here, yeah, so we're using all the things that we've done so far to build into how do we prepare for an actual finished painting, not just an exercise, not just trying things out and stretching our skills in different directions, but okay, here's the image I want to make a painting from. How am I going to approach this? So the things that I'm looking at as I'm preparing for a painting, which again, to me, that's like 95% of the work of making a successful painting, is all the things that happen before you even start painting. And then drawing is really important. And we're drawing when we're using our brush as well as with our pencil and making, outlines of what we're wanting to paint. So if you're somebody who feels like your drawing skills aren't super strong, that doesn't mean you shouldn't be here. And it is okay to trace or otherwise copy image. Depending on what your goals are, right? If you want to be one of the top respected professional artists out there, you don't really want to be reliant on tracing. You want to have really strong drawing skills, because honestly, it's going to show up in your work. Even if you trace something perfectly, the chance that you're going to be able to use your brush to make shapes the way you actually want them to match that drawing through all the complex value shapes in a painting are a lot lower if your drawing skills aren't there, because that's all drawing. It's placement of that brush. It's the same thing. So if you have any interest or have put off gaining some drawing skills, I would highly suggest working on those, because you will see it in your work and it'll make a lot of painting a lot easier. Not something that we do a lot here in this course. I just like to throw that out there. I'm not a snob. I'm not going to say you go home and learn to draw before you come back to my course, because you get to choose why you're here. You get to choose what you're wanting to paint and how you want to paint. But it is really helpful. So we do talk about drawing and how to get a drawing that will work for you depending on how you want to paint. I'm really careful. I'm drawn to detail. I know I'm going to want to put more detail into something than I actually want to. Like once I start painting, it's really easy to go too far. And so I am careful with how I draw to make sure that I will leave areas blank that I want to handle in a more abstract way, where I want it just to be a little bit looser, or I'll just do some very blocky marks to remind myself of where I want my darkest darks to be, or something like that, so that I'm not tempted to follow every last line of my drawing, because if the line is there, I'm probably going to want to follow it. So I talk about all sorts of things like that, and we get into painting a more simplified version of the reference, and then we follow up with a much more detailed version of that reference. And that's just, I take the same painting, I finish it to a point where this could be a finished painting. But if it's mine, I would choose to keep going till it's here, because that's who I am. But there's so many different ways to work. I like to try to show multiple takes on it. So that's this module.
Thank you for that. And then we have detalization, so lovely details and a lovely subject as well. We will see this one big in just a moment. This is a subject that so many people ask questions about. How do I paint stones underwater? Or how do I paint something underwater? And what technique would I use? What colors would I use? All of these things that can feel like it's completely impossible in watercolor, because we need to know
Yes.
before we start, and it feels like something we need to build up. And here we see it looks like you know what you're doing. So someone who walks through this will hopefully gain a lot of insights. Do you have a couple of
Yes.
comments on what those insights could be?
Yeah, so this module is following the same overview as the previous modules, just using a different painting, using a different reference, and going through the same steps to practice a second time through a process. And, like always, take what works for you, add things that you've learned before that work for you, take out things that don't work for you. This is just one approach to help you work through and keep those values where you want them. And then the very simple answer to how to do the rocks underwater, that it's a simple answer, but it's deceptively complex, is it's all just shapes that have a value and a color, and that's it. The problem is that we're thinking about all the things we know. Water moves, it's clear, you can see through it, there's reflections, all of these things. That's your brain overworking in this direction of the things we think we know about a subject. And we don't need any of that. All we need is those abstract shapes. So being able to see those abstract shapes as they actually are, or very close to it, drawing them accurately, seeing the values, applying the values accurately, and then also color. And so, yes, we walk through that in this painting, and hopefully it really helps kind of shift how we look at some of these things. There's so much that seems so complicated and so hard. And I will say again, I don't think anything is harder or easier. I think that's the wrong way to look at it. It's more complex or more simple. It'll be more time consuming to handle if you're wanting to be very photorealistic, especially. But even if you're going for a looser approach, loose doesn't mean fast and uncontrolled. You still need to know what you want your shape to be, where you want it to be, what value it is, what color it is, how you want to handle that paint. If you want a very fresh, clean look, you have to know all of those things, just as if you're doing all of the details. So it's not a difference in how you're applying. I think we also have this sense that, oh, if I was really good, I would just drop, do these quick marks and this would just come together and be beautiful. Yeah, some artists make their work look like that, but that's because they've practiced for so many hours. And it's not just, you said this earlier, Hannah, and I loved it. It's not just the hours put in, it's the quality of those hours. What are you focused on? Are you thinking about what's happening? Are you paying attention? Oh, I just did this movement. How much water was on my brush? What just happened? I don't like it. Let me see what that was. And then the next time, oh, I really like how that worked. Well, what did I do? What proportion of paint and water did I have? How much was I bringing to the paper? What was the shape I made? How much work was I doing with the brush? And, so much that people talk about mud and complain about the muddiness. And most of the time, it's not an issue of pigments. It's not an issue of how many layers. It's how you're using your brush. You can build lots of layers in very clean, beautiful ways. But if you move your brush a whole lot while you're putting those layers down, you're stirring all those pigments back up together and blending them into what can turn into kind of a muddy mix, instead of these beautiful clean layers where you get the granulation or the other effects that watercolor can do, which some of that I talk about in the course too, of course. But yeah, so really everything is an abstract shape, has a value, and it has a color. And that's that's the very simple answer to painting absolutely anything.
Thank you so much for taking us on this mind journey. And as you can see, there are these beautiful, beautiful watercolors that you are taught first and foremost, getting those exercises and getting those skills in, and then using those observational skills, those technique skills, and those watercolor rendering skills, and taking that and using those to create both simplified versions and more detailed versions of these beautiful landscapes. So this is everything that is included in this big pre-recorded program. And the result during this program is that you get the skills, you develop the skills to analyze any reference for your value structure, before you paint, simplify complex scenes without losing that sense of impact. 3, choose between loose and detailed intentionally, so you can choose where you want your painting to go, not by accident, but because you want that. And also getting the skills to use your own references and not need to follow along with a demonstration or a video. This is independence that is being created, and that is the skill development happening in this program. And in a couple of minutes, we will continue painting with Jessica and see in action how she uses this reference that we have and the exercises and the value studies that she painted previously to support her in painting a quick color version of that scene. And this program that we've just shared with you, this fits very well for the build and the create stages. So this master journey, the program that we just walked through, the pre-recorded program, is perfect for those who want to understand why and not just copy steps. And also if you're ready to develop your personal approach, that's where this one comes in. Of course, if you're in between the discover and build phase, this will also be a very helpful course or program for you as well. And of course, if you're in the share state and you just are super fascinated about Jessica's particular approach, this is also going to be super. But it is specifically designed to take you to the next level when you are at this build and create stages, meaning that you know the basics and you just want to become even more independent and step even more into your artistic choices as an artist. Yeah. And here is the regular price, and as Jessica has shared with me, oh my, already now this is so much value for this price, which is pretty insane because now we have a launch, which means we have a discount. So right now, especially if you join us at this particular moment while we're still having this conversation, you will get first and foremost the launch offer, and then secondly, you will also, as long as you're here, you're joining while we're still having the live stream happening, you will have an additional 10% off. So let's take a look. Now, this is the launch price, $250, so it's more than half, and then additional 10% if you're joining us while we're still here live. So if you feel intrigued, warmest welcome to join us on this journey. And a bonus for both this one and if you also, or if you join the mentorship program, you will also have this recording that we're recording right now, so the recording of this workshop, so you will get that as well. So the special thing, which is a first time ever thing, is for those who want to stop guessing what's working and what isn't, and finally know, get honest feedback, not just that, oh, it's so lovely, beautiful painting, but clear words, specific direction, targeted for your growth areas, and a breakthrough through that plateau that we spoke about previously, getting unstuck with expert eyes on your individual work, So this is that between build and create stages. This is that next level, and you want to paint with more confidence, apply the methods to your subjects, your vision, and just get that support in stepping into more and more of knowing what you're doing and choosing intentionally. We have created, or Jessica has opened up the opportunity to join the mentorship with Jessica L. Bryant, See What You've Been Missing, which is a live guided program designed for artists who want honest, specific feedback, not polite praise, and work directly for anyone who wants to work directly with the master who will show you exactly what is working, what is not working yet, and what to do next. We will talk more about this after the next demonstration, but here is an overview. There are 4 live Zoom sessions with Jessica, around 2 hours each, where you will have real-time painting reviews. There will be tailored demonstrations to share specific points and subjects that those of you who are there want to learn more of. There will be the chance to ask questions and get your questions answered, and just develop that everyone who joins will develop even more from every one of these Zoom sessions. There will also be written feedback from Jessica between the sessions, so detailed notes on your individual paintings. Super valuable. And you get to work on your own subjects, and there will be a WhatsApp group with Jessica where you get to share your questions and also get your questions answered, and share your work in progress, guidance between sessions. Like this is an insane amount of support that you will get. There's a smaller group, a maximum of 20 artists. So this is an intimate format, and everyone will get personal attention and time with Jessica. 3 months of support. So enough time to see real transformation in your work. And probably we could have added a 0 to the price. So here are the 3 ways that you can work and learn more from Jessica. The standard plan includes the pre-recorded big program that we shared, that we talked about previously, where we took a look at the 4 different modules and everything that they entailed. That is the standard plan. The elite plan includes everything. I will mention that in just a moment. The mentorship only is for everyone who feels that I already have these skills and I'm only interested in the live feedback and being part of this group and getting that support from Jessica herself. So that is mentorship only. This has a value of $650 and more. And right now it's $350 for this mentorship. The elite plan includes both of this, and that is what we most highly recommend. That is the most value, and it's also much value. So this is for $450 you get everything that we have just shared. So always welcome to join. If you join the mentorship only or the elite, there is a limited number. There's only 20 spots. So if you feel intrigued, make sure to join us, and you can do so by scrolling down and clicking the button below your screen. Also, if you're joining us while we're still here, these are actually the prices for you. So the button is below the screen. You can scroll down and click join the mentorship, and we are super excited for you and your next step in your transformation. And we're actually only halfway, so it's time for the second part, where it's time to see how to apply the value study to watercolor painting, and we will see how much time we have, but also how to objectively assess and improve your own painting. So we will soon talk more about what's included in the mentorship, but if you already know that this is what you want and need, make sure to join us now so that you get one of those 20 spots. So now I'm going to hand it over to you now, Jessica, for the second demonstration.
And I will just add one more thing to that, the plan. And I don't say this because we're trying to sell the classes. Like, I genuinely like trying to help people. The only reason I do teaching in classes is because I really like to help people get where they want to be. And I will say, if you're taking just the mentorship, you will get the most out of that if you have already done the course that we're relaunching today. Because the way I talk through these things, the mentorship is going to be talking in that way. So there's going to be an assumption that you already understand these concepts the way I describe them. Those who haven't, like, you will probably get the most out of it if you've really gone through that, especially doing these close together. If you can do at least the first couple modules of that course before the mentorship first session starts, which is a little ways out yet. I think it's next month. It will be a lot more helpful because we will directly be kind of continuing that way of thinking and looking and analyzing the pieces. So I just wanted to throw that in there. If you're at all on the fence, I know I said it before, I am so happy with how that course turned out, and the information I was able to share, the way I shared it, I think is probably some of the best teaching I've managed to do in a more concise manner. Let's see. Okay, I'm gonna switch my video here for you. And I don't know if you could see me in between there, but I was working on my drawing just to save some time. So what I did here, this is gonna be a little bit more than a color study. We're gonna do like half study, half painting, because I'm gonna try to do this in only like 15 minutes of time, maybe. What I did here is I mentioned this before, I like to do verticals where I'm going to place my trees, just because for me, it helps me track the shape, the angle, what I'm after. And then I gave myself a hint on some of them of which direction those branches are going, but only for the ones where it's above the main clump of value shape. And then a little hint down in here in some of the areas where I have lighter shapes, just so I can track roughly what I'm trying to do. So I did not really carefully outline anything. This is a somewhat rough sketch. And then I also blocked in some of the main directional darks and did some hatching lines so I can remember those are where I want my darks to be. I said I wasn't going to be able to demonstrate this, but maybe I can. Okay, you might get a little extra bonus thing here with me. We'll see if I can throw it in. So greens, this is not a color mixing course. I do talk about it in the course, but I I do have greens in my palette. I typically mix my greens from yellows and blues and reds because you have way more control, especially for trying to find nuanced color that feels right. There's very few greens that come out of a tube that look at all realistic or at all like something in nature. They're usually very strong, very high chroma, very saturated, and very, very intense. And greens in nature are often closer to grays and browns than they are bright greens. So I'm just making some puddles here just as a starting place. I'm going to get a variety of greens going. So I've got warm yellow, warm meaning closer towards orange, cool yellow, closer towards green, and then I've got cool and warm blue. And so I'm just going to mix, like I said, a few things so I have some variety to choose from. I'm not even looking at my reference right now. I'm just getting some color mixed. And from here, I will look at my reference and figure out where I want to be. And I don't care if I'm intermixing my things. Nothing in here is super vivid, bright color, high chroma color. So everything is going to be a little bit more towards gray anyways. It doesn't matter a lot that how I'm mixing these colors. I'm going to have a lot of overlap. If you're unfamiliar mixing color, you can always test swatches and compare them. If you're going to do that, it's nicest to test on an edge and hold it right up next to what you're looking at. And so I can, these are only yellow and blue. I'm most certainly going to be adding some red into these, so it's not quite so bright, but we'll see. Make myself a little red puddle. And it does not matter which red I use. I have a warm and cool. This happens to be my cool red. It does not matter in this case because none of these are super bright, vivid colors. So I kind of I want to find my value, remember, because we're doing value shape. Value is most important. And yellows are typically yellows are the lightest value you're going to see. In watercolor, we're not going to get any darker than how a pigment comes out of the tube. So if out of the tube, this is the value of my color, I can't, if I think something is yellow, but it's a lot darker than that, then it's not actually this yellow. There's something else in there darkening it. It might be, really it's all red, yellow, blue. So there's going to be some red and some blue in with that yellow to help get the darker value. And so with my greens, this is probably also going to happen that I can't get dark enough to get my dark values to come out with these particular pigments. I could pull in neutral tint. I don't like to do that. I usually use blue with blues are usually where the darkest values are, blues and violets in particular, but I don't usually use a lot of violet from the tube. I use mostly red, yellow, blue. I said I wasn't going to talk about color. I'm going off. Sorry, losing track of what I'm actually trying to do here. This looks pretty close. It's nice and earthy. I might start here. I'm just going to work left to right, and I'm going to articulate the tops of this shape. And again, this is maybe closer to how I would paint if I were doing something in plein air. So if I was working on location, where I have a limited amount of time and I want to capture the sense of this place. Again, there's no value being added into these right now. This is just one color, one value. It is pretty close to the correct value that I'm seeing there. Close enough that it's fine for conveying what I'm trying to convey. I'm not trying to be exact in my shapes, but I'm trying to be consistent with the kind of shapes I see here. So they're not all uniform, right? The branches are not all the same. They're not all going the same direction. There's going to be clumps because remember, branches are coming towards us and away from us at all angles. And I'm working pretty fluidly. I have a nice puddle here that I'm pulling from. So right now, this first tree is still a little bit damp and I am paying attention to that. This is going very fast. This is not something like, don't ever watch somebody else paint and think that you're supposed to paint that same way. I mean, we do that subconsciously. We've got the copycat, monkey see, monkey do kind of thing as humans, where we watch something and then we innately try to copy the thing that we see happening. I'm going to shortcut a little bit in the sake of time, and instead of doing red, yellow, blue, I'm going to bring some brown in. This is a burnt umber. I love burnt umber and French ultramarine together. They make a fairly dark, not inky dark, not like a 10 value, but pretty dark. And I can lean it towards warm with more brown or lean it towards cool with more blue. So interior shadows are often a little bit warmer. So I'm going to lean it a little bit towards the brown for a little warmth. And while this is, I think, still just wet enough, I'm going to just drop a little bit of darkness where I see the underside of some of these branches, and hopefully, at least in some areas, my paint is still damp enough that this will blend out and give me a value range that feels reasonably believable or consistent with what I'm seeing. And here it's dry, so here I'm just getting dark on light. If it's dry, I can place those shapes, rinse my brush out, and I can just set some water on top and soften the tops of those shapes. And this is if I'm working very fast. So this is if we were to call this a study, it's very detailed, and it's not, you'll see in the course, it's not how I would do a study at all. A study is going to be my 1-inch brush, very blocky, capturing the main abstract shapes. This is not main abstract shapes. We're getting into plenty of detail here, but I just want to, again, like this is more like a plein air style. It's a quicker approach to conveying the sense of this. I do need to watch my time. So I'm just going, these are going to get a little bit blockier because I'm trying to go faster. That's maybe where I would like to handle it, but I want to get through this for you. So I'm going to speed up. Speeding up just means my shapes are going to be a little less carefully articulated, but I can still get the direction, the shape of the shape. So I'm seeing this angle in this tree back here. And yeah, my branches don't look exactly the same, but the placement of the outside edge, I'm trying to be the same, and the angle, I'm trying to be the same. So I'm giving you the sense of what's happening there without giving you all of the information. And here, again, just trying to drop in a little bit of a value variation. And if my main green that I was using is too wet still, like this is, those darks spread and kind of fill, so that all got a little bit darker than I would have wanted, I can dry my brush out and soak some of that back up. It's a little darker, but actually overall it works, it fits well enough, close enough. So something that I sometimes do in some of the live workshops I do, we will paint something, like a quick value study, and we'll get into more detail, and maybe we'll do a few different levels of detail with the same subject. And if your values are accurate and your main shapes are accurate, you can have a very loose 3-value study, and you can have a very detailed full value painting and hold the two side by side from across a room. They will look the same. They will read the same because the main value structure is the same. So if you make those shapes small enough, like all the way across a room, they will read the same. And so that's why value is so important. It's we've got some flexibility on the size of shapes, how much we represent detail or not, because let's face it, if you're looking at landscape and looking at the far distance, you're not seeing the details of any of the trees at all. It's just a mass of green that has slight value variation. Well, what is that slight value variation? What are those shapes? Are they vertical? Are they horizontal? If you're representing that close enough, it's going to feel right. Okay, so I'm halfway across. I'm going to just start with this area to make sure that I can kind of complete one area before we're out of time. I said I would demonstrate, add something extra in here. So what I'm going to do is show what I do in full in my large studio paintings. When I get into very complex subjects like this, where it's easy to lose track, especially a large painting where I have a ton of this kind of subject going on, these styles of low contrast value shapes, it can be really hard to track where you are and to have the overall sense still feel right. And so if you draw things in and you work lighter to darker, you lose your pencil lines, right? They disappear into those mid values. So I will use my neutral tint, usually a little bit on the lighter side. Because watercolor is transparent, we will see those lower layers showing through. So I can take my neutral tint and I can find these darkest darks, and I can kind of map in what those shapes look like. Now, if you try this, the thing to be aware of is neutral tint is staining. It will not move, which is why it works for this. I can paint layers on top and it's not going to shift, become muddy, blend into those upper layers of pigment, any of that kind of stuff. It stays put, but it stays put. So if it's not where you want it, if you put it down in a way that you're unhappy with, you're out of luck. It's going to be there forever. So it's worth really slowing down if you haven't done a lot of work with staining pigments like that, or you're not super confident with your drawing or your painting. It's worth sometimes really slowing down for something. If that's not you and you don't want to have to slow down for something, this might not be your approach, and that's very okay. I used to try to do this with other things, like I've done the burnt umber and ultramarine, but those don't work well because they're lifting pigments. And I learned the hard way that if you're not real careful with how you put those upper layers on, it'll all mix together and you get a little bit of a muddier, more opaque texture, which there's nothing wrong with that. I just didn't like it. And it certainly doesn't work if I show at the Transparent Watercolor Society of America show when I get accepted, and they don't allow things that have that look. So I've learned to be a little more careful. Okay, so if you notice what I was doing there, I was looking at those darks. Remember from the value study we did before, how some of these, the darkest darks, we're seeing this kind of more horizontal movement. I didn't do every single one. I'm kind of blocking in rough placement of them so I can find my way through, make sure I'm in the right place here. I'm looking at this tree, stands out just a little bit. There's some darker darks. I think I'm in the right place. If not, I will have just moved this tree. I'm wanting to go fast for you, so I'm not taking the time I would sometimes take. And again, speed comes with repetition. So the more you do the same kinds of thing, make the same kinds of shape, the faster it is to do it again, and the faster you see those shapes accurately. It takes a good while to get to that place. You take your time. If you're trying to get something really careful and accurate, trying to do it fast is not going to be the way to do it. There's plenty of times that I work very carefully and very slowly and with purpose on a section that I want to turn out a certain way. I know I need to not just, have fun and get into it and start. I don't know what just happened. Those shapes look wrong. Maybe my drawing was off. I think I added some trees. That's okay. Talking and painting does interesting things. Okay, we'll call that note. Maybe I want a little bit more here. I'm kind of trying to remember to squint and see where my darkest darks are so I get them where I want them. This was here a little bit. Okay, and then I can show you what purpose that was for. All right, probably doesn't look like much right now, except kind of a polka dotty thing. Come back in and make more of this. I liked, that was pretty close. That's my warm yellow and warm blue. It seemed pretty close. When I get into this area, I'm probably going to start mixing in a little bit more color variety just so it feels less exactly homogeneous, because it's not. In fact, right in here, I've got some lighter middle values. I made this a little bit more yellow maybe than it is. And now I can just go over this whole area is really pretty dark. I'm going to bring this middle value green that I had made all the way down through here. You see how that neutral tint still shows through. And it kind of starts to begin to build a sense of texture in there, even though it was really pretty quick. And now while that's wet, because it's not quite dark enough as some of the areas I see here, that's going to take a little while to dry. Actually, I might leave that go on for just a minute. There's this tree in front. I am not going to take the time to articulate exactly that tree. If this were a studio painting, I might really work on some of the branches here because this is closer to us and we can see a little bit more detail. I'm not going to make it look like the whole tree is exactly articulated. It's just where I can see some of the branches that are picking up more light on the tips. I would make sure I get some of that, probably a little bit of that through here, a little bit through here, and the rest I would let look the way I'm handling it here. I like handling things in a variety of ways like that because it's closer to how we observe. In real life, we're not looking at the full detail of everything all at once. Our eyes move through a scene or over a subject, and we pick up on different detail in different areas as we're looking through. And we get this sense that we've seen everything and seen all the details. of the subject when really we haven't. We've slowed down in a few areas and our brain is just kind of filling in the difference, interpolating what else is around. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is look at this. I know I've got more to go, but I'm not worried. I'd rather get one area pretty good to show you what I'm thinking. So I'm here. This is still wet. I could still work in here very easily and let those colors and values blend to get this look. What I'm seeing is I am too high contrast. This is mostly light and dark. There's a little bit of middle value. What I'm seeing here, the whole thing is darker. My lightest values are not this light. I'm still too light in there. And this area, there's a lot more darkness and depth pulling this further back. So I've got my neutral tint that is showing me roughly the location of those darkest darks, but there's a lot of almost as dark darks all around it that I don't have. So let's mix a darker something in the green family, but I need to be darker than what I was just working with, which was these two pigments. So if I want to be darker, I probably need to add some of that red in there because the red and blue makes that violet that will make it a little darker. And I probably can still get a pretty good green. I know I can because this is what I do, even though I've added that red in there. So just so you can see what that's going to look like. It's a very kind of earthy green. So I'm looking through here. Again, I don't want to do a lot of detail, but there is some value variation. So I'm not just going to paint this as one solid shape. I'm going to paint around where I see a little bit of a lighter kind of these clumpy lumps of, you know, the shrubby nature of this tree, or where the trees all come together and it's a complex, chaotic lump of shapes. I'm looking at what I actually see happening in those shapes. It doesn't matter whether, I don't want to think about it as tree again, because that will make me start to do things that aren't what I see happening. I just want to make shapes that I see happening through here. In this area, I do want to keep that lighter. It's a little bit too light, but if I add a tiny bit of detail, a little bit of texture, when you add small dark shapes on top of a lighter shape, you are effectively darkening that overall shape. It's like if you've seen stippling, little dots or hatching lines that can be used to indicate value. When you put lines or dots or shapes next to each other, the closer they get, the darker it looks, the more they're spaced apart. Your brain is just kind of combining or blending those darks and lights together. And so I can get a little bit of texture in here. And notice I did, yes, I'm pretty fast because I do this a lot, but that wasn't really intensive, careful painting to imply texture through there. What I was making sure I did is staying true to the style of shape I see. So rounded, square, horizontal, vertical, angled, those kinds of things, those abstract shapes. It would take me a lot more time to make this tree look the way I would like to make it look. So I know I'm going to be largely unhappy with that, and it's okay. This is what happens to me when I do plein air work. It's part of why I don't usually like to share it publicly, because I always expect it to look like my studio work, and of course it's not going to. Studio work is, for me, hours and hours of loving on the subject and getting all sorts of nuance and detail. So this is not an exact representation. It's close. It's very close. But there's lots of things in here that I am very quickly making judgments and simplifying because we're on a little time crunch, just as if I was working outdoors. Now, what I'm going to start to make sure I'm not doing, since this is not exactly the same anyways, the tendency we have is to make patterns. We tend to make patterns out of things. So the tendency is to accidentally make every single branch or every single indication of these clumps of needles look the same, where they're all the same width, they're all the same depth, they're all spaced apart the same amount. I don't want that because that's not realistic at all. That's not what the sense of this is. So I'm going to come in and make sure that I'm breaking up the shape in there very irregularly, or irregularly enough, which, little bonus tip, if you have a reference photo and you happened to get a tree that looks very perfect, be careful because if you paint it just the way it looks and you do an excellent job, if it looks too perfect, it's going to look wrong. And that's one of the hardest things. Something can work as a photograph and be a disaster as a painting and just really feel unrealistic. Okay, we made it that far through. How much more time do you need, Hannah? Can I keep going for a couple more minutes or should I call this good?
We do have quite a lot of things to cover still.
Okay, so I
Yeah,
should probably call this good.
probably,
But you see
but
the
we are all
idea?
loving it, so it's very,
Hopefully this helps. So it's not the exact same. I've exaggerated my values, right? You can see my lights are still too light. I could choose to keep it like that because maybe I love it. That's okay. But I could also really quick with just water. This area looks too detailed, so I'm just gonna soften, lightly run my brush with wet, hopefully kind of clean water. Same here, this is still wet, so I need a very, very light approach, but I'm just letting that kind of blend together because really this is just a clump. But notice how the shapes up here really tell us that these are trees. And because I have my darks, it's the drawing is accurate where I have this vertical, I can see the top of this tree. The darkest darks that I can see are coming in a vertical. It's in line in the right kind of place because I was true to what I see in my reference image. Even though I interpret it a lot, I translate it very differently, but the essence is still there. Okay.
thank you so much for sharing that, and such a beautiful process. And Jolene says that is better than my tree, so I'm very encouraged. That's
Oh, good.
great. That's really good. And if anyone painted along with Jessica, or if you plan to do so, you're more than welcome to upload your photos to and also tag us. So using hashtag paint underscore with underscore artefacto, or share that on the WhatsApp chat. And remember the pain point, I get feedback like, oh, that's a lovely painting, or but never what actually could be changed to improve. And you just saw it, Jessica, and we haven't done this. We need to do this. There are so many
I
things left
did.
to cover.
Oh, that was in there. Hopefully you heard me where I said, oh, nope,
Yeah,
that's still too light and that's still too
yeah,
dark and
yeah.
that's not quite the same shape. So, but I'm not hard on myself. Okay, I am hard on myself, but I was not giving you the example. I mean, you want to speak to yourself very kindly with just observation and then, okay, I can fix this, I can change this.
And when we have already painted, because when you assess someone else's work, they will already have put down their brush.
Right.
So what would you have done to assess your own work in a kind but also supportive way when
Yeah.
when you have put down that brush?
Well, and in this case, number one is what was my purpose? What was I trying to do and what were my goals? Because we're human. We can't do all of the things all at once every time. That's just not realistic. So if you can set yourself some specific goals, like this time, I'm going to make sure that I handle my paints more fluidly because I usually get these dry, scratchy marks and I don't like that. Then when you have your painting done or close to done, or when you've taken a break, look at it and say, okay, I was trying to make sure that I was more fluid. How did I do? Was I more oh, look, these areas I
Mm.
actually was. I remembered it here. Yay, I got it in some of these places. It's really important to celebrate those things and give yourself some positive feedback because the way the brain works, if you latch onto the good things, you will find and go that direction more. And if you're stuck on from a negative point of view, it's harder to break out of that. So in this case, is what was I trying to do? I wanted to convey a rough sense of this clump of trees. I wanted to watch the upper shapes of those trees and have them be fairly carefully painted to match. And in that lower section, I wanted to make sure that it's one big clump, but I wanted my value shapes to match the style of value shapes in my reference. Even if I didn't take the time to make them as careful as I might in a studio painting, this is not a studio painting. And this is hard for me, honestly. Having to do demos very quickly is really uncomfortable because I like to feel like I'm in control. And it's different. And so it makes me very uncomfortable. And I like that because it's a good place to be. That's where learning and growth comes. And I'm asking you as students to, put yourself out there and try these things and do stuff. I better be able to do the same thing. So in this case, I'm relatively happy with it. It's not what I would want to do in a studio piece. So I'm always going to feel that bit of judgment, But overall, I met the goal. There's some shapes that I maybe would have liked to handle a little bit differently, or wish I'd seen something, or maybe this could have been a little bit faster, or maybe I would have done this area different. Um, and so those are things I can write down for a future painting and think about next time. And remember, this is what I want to think about before I start the piece. And I did that for today. Okay, you're going to want to do it like this. You can't do it like that. We don't have the time to do it like that. And that's not the purpose of this. That's not what you're trying to share and show. So for what I was trying to do, it's pretty okay.
Thank you for that. And as you have noticed by now, Jessica wants to share so much, and that is
That's
also the case when it comes to her assessing other people's work. So we can see here is like, yeah, there it's a bit of an essay.
yes.
So the volume of written feedback from Jessica is a lot. You will get so much support targeting your areas, what is already working, and areas of improvement, and pinpointing those things that you can write down to focus on the next time you're painting.
Yeah.
And that is included in this mentorship with Jessica. And this is the first time ever that Jessica is offering this at Artefacto. Personal feedback on your paintings. And here is the reason why this is created. Yeah, we have comments such as I would need someone who's judging my picture. I prefer honest critique, help me without mercy. And also that the artists themselves should give that feedback that gives it so much more depth. I need clear words, not lovely or beautiful. This is nothing that doesn't help me. And so
Yeah.
there is a specific reason why this has been created, because our students have realized how much this kind of additional guidance really makes a huge difference. So the result of these requests is a mentorship shaped by real artists, designed to help you see clearly, paint with intention, and finally understand why your paintings work or why they don't work, and how you can grow and change for them to work even more and even more. So this is what is included in the mentorship program. And I also want to mention that if you have already taken the first program, the big program, email our team and they will set you up for a special deal to join the mentorship program. So there are the 4 live Zoom sessions over 3 months where you get live feedback, and yeah, the sessions are tailored to the group. There's written feedback on your own paintings between sessions, and you get to work on your subjects and bring your own references. There's direct access to Jessica via WhatsApp, and it's a small group format, so a maximum of 20 artists. So here is an overview once again, and it's an integrated approach. All the themes weave together, different emphasis on there are different emphases on different sessions, and Jessica will adapt the teaching to the specific group. So this that we're going to talk about is a direction and not a rigid curriculum. But here is an overview of the plan as it is today, and that is that the first session will be all about seeing and analyzing values. Please share a bit about what your intentions are for this first
Yeah.
session, Jessica.
So the first session, so prior to the first session, there'll be an opportunity for participants to submit a painting, a reference in a painting that they've been working on, that they have hopefully at that point finished, for some feedback. And so I'll be able to see what everybody is doing in their own work. And I always find, like, I have learned not to get too rigid in things like this, in the small group things, because there's a different like culture in each small group, and you'll see different kinds of trends. And so I want to be able to see where everybody's at, so that my sessions are catered to what that group actually is needing from me. And again, there's lots of one-on-one time through this. So if you're an outlier and you're not, like, it's not like everybody ends up in the same place, by no means. But there'll be the same kinds of tendencies that I see. So I'll have a chance to see that before this first session. So there's always a chance that small things will change, but my plan for this first session is to, really reinforce all the things that you're coming into this with, what we're looking at with observation and values, how you're going to look at your own work, how you're going to try to problem solve. It's another skill to have, to be able to analyze your own work and problem solve and self-critique. That's a skill to learn how to do, and we'll help each other through some of that. We'll take examples with your comfort. We'll take use each other's work as examples. And my hope is that like we all kind of share. There's no judgment. If you're a beginner, you're not going to be in the same place as an advanced painter. This is not comparison between people's skill sets or where they are. All of us are on our own individual trajectory of what we're doing and how we want to get there, how we're going to get there, what we want it to be. Something in art, well, in anything, we compare so much, and I do too, and it drives me crazy. So it's one of the things that I really like to do in classes is to push that, to be comfortable in where you are and who you are in this place, because it's always changing. You're growing, you're going to be in a different place. So we will start, that first session will really be kind of coming together as a group, looking at where we're at. I'll have a chance to plan for what we're talking through in the next and giving people direction for what I want them to focus on for the next homework assignment before the next session.
And
And then
this is what,
obviously lots of Q&A. It's a live session. So we will talk and you'll ask all the questions and I'll answer all the questions.
and this is what makes this so different from a pre-recorded program. This is this is created for the people who join, which is why it complements the program so well. So the ideal thing would be to join both of them. However, of course, if you feel that you are already at a place where this is the only thing you need, then it's going to be very different from joining a pre-recorded program for sure, because it's going to be up to the people. You're going to shape that together with Jessica. And the second session is about values and your own references, focusing more on how to work with one's own references. Is there anything you want to share about that part of this experience?
And just that again, like there's a chance we'll start to touch on this in the first session. Kind of depends on who joins and where everyone is at and what makes sense to do. But in general, this is what I'm guessing from past experiences is where we're going to be at. But these are all things that will for sure be covered in the mentorship. So the idea is making sure that everyone is developing skills for choosing appropriate references. Appropriate meaning that it suits your skill set, it suits the kind of work you like to do, it suits the style that you're wanting to work in ways that set you up to make more successful paintings instead of having very frustrating experiences. And again, this is a great thing to get to do in a group live because we can look at each other's references, and it can be so much easier to see things in somebody else's work because we don't have the same attachment. So if you can watch what I'm saying about somebody else's references, it can make it click a little bit more easily for you when you're looking at your own, because you're able to see how it applies to somebody else. It just kind of, I don't know, for me anyways, it shifts the way that you're thinking and processing that information and makes it a little bit easier and more fun. It's neat seeing what other people want to do.
And then, which another topic, so to speak, it might not be just the third session, but another topic is to practice for skill improvement, skill reinforcement, and having those skills becoming more consistent and confident. Is there anything you want to share about that aspect and that potentially that session?
Things that I've kind of already talked about with the, like the idea of taking notes about what's hard for you. It took me years to think of doing that, and it was really helpful. That's not everybody's style, but I've got lots of things I've watched work for other people, things that have worked for me, and so lots of different ideas I'll share. So hopefully there's things that work for everybody, or somebody else in the program might come up with something new to me and new to you that might be really helpful too. Again, benefits of small group live learning sessions as you get more because you have more input from more people and more experiences for all of us to pull from. But yeah, the idea that really all of this is skills. It's not magic. There's not some innate talent you're born with. I think that's a complete myth. If you love something and you really want to do it and you practice it and do it a lot while thinking, about how you're doing it, like intentional practice, you're going to gain skills and be able to do that thing that you want to do. Even from like all the hardships you could have, there's ways to work around so many hardships and so many things. And just, yeah.
And
I'm
then
excited.
and then we move into, so all of these are preparatory steps towards the fourth element of this mentorship, which is all about preparing for independence and feeling that you have created a thinking system that works for any subject. And also, of course, celebrating that progress and creating a clear direction for continuing on your own. So that is the next level aspect. Do you have any insights that you want
Yeah.
to share about this step, Jessica?
Well, for me, each of the sessions is going to be building towards this because all of it is just gaining confidence. I mean, so much of it is confident. I mean, who of us, I struggle with confidence. I think everybody does, or almost everybody does. And so much of it is just feeling like you have reinforcement that you are doing okay, that you're going the right direction, that you have some confidence that what you're doing makes sense and is being done in a way that's going to help you out. So each of these sessions is going to be building towards that. We're going to be practicing with every session. How are you choosing reference images? How are you seeing those values, and what preparatory work are you doing for a painting, if any? Preparatory work can be just thinking. It doesn't have to be those value studies and things. If that's a turnoff for you, that's okay. It's a turnoff for me too, honestly. I will still do them for some things, but not always. But I've learned how to think in replacement of some of those so that I have a plan that's going to work for me. So we'll be practicing those same things throughout. And so the last session will just be kind of our last chance to reinforce any of the things, final questions, final direction. I love if we can do it, I would like to have everybody have several images prepped that they can work from in the future as they feel confident like they're going into their next paintings with an idea of what they're doing. And again, you can always go back to that big 15-hour course, which gives all of this again. And after doing the mentorship, you're going to see all of that differently too. And it's just more opportunities to practice. And you could do those exact same things using your own reference material instead of the reference material in the course, but listening to the same approach that was in the course and, practice your own things that way too.
Thank you so much, Jessica. And we also have lots of thank yous in the chat. I've just realized Judith saying thank you so much, Susan saying thank you so much, Danielle saying thanks a lot, very interesting, Jelena saying thanks very much, Wanda and Sylvie, and Marcus and Irene and Christine. And George says amazing instruction, very good workshop, thank you. And Marcus saying thanks, signed, wonderful. And Kathy says I am so excited to be taking the mentorship program. Jessica is the best teacher I've encountered in the art world.
Oh, that's so nice. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing those sweet words, Kathy. And also, when you have completed the mentorship program, you will also receive a certificate of completion. This certificate can serve as a formal recognition of your artistic growth, whether for professional use or simply as a meaningful milestone in your creative journey. And the reason why this format works is that it's a small group, so everyone gets personal attention and you're not lost in a crowd. And it's gonna be your references, your subjects, and you apply the method on what you want to paint, the subjects you want to paint, the style you want to paint in. And you also receive written feedback between sessions, so there is a continuous guidance, not just during the live Zoom sessions. And as you've already heard Jessica sharing throughout this workshop, it's about non-judgmental problem solving. So it's not about criticism, and it's also not about just painting and having fun. It's about what works and what doesn't and why, and how can we support ourselves to grow to the next level. And also it's about building toward independence. As you heard, all of the things are there to support you into becoming more confident and independent. So that is the goal of all of this. And the results are that you will learn to see values more clearly. You will learn how to analyze any references, not just course exercises, but your references, and knowing what works and what does not through learning and becoming skilled at objective self-assessment without guessing and also without judgment. And paint with intention so that every decision has a reason and is not just up to chance. And independence from tutorials is one of those big goals that you are working towards. And then finishing off with a clear direction forward so that you know exactly what to focus on next. And this mentorship is for you if you can follow along with tutorials, but you struggle with your own references, you want to understand why things are working and how to choose. You've been painting for a while, but you feel that you're kind of stuck making the same mistakes and you want to get out of that. And if you want honest feedback and that will support you where you are, and you're ready to put in the time and the effort between the sessions if you want to maximize the impact and the transformation of this process. It is not for those looking for a magic formula without any practice, or if you want for people to just say, oh, it's a beautiful painting, because you, Jessica, will be more precise than that. And if you have no time to paint between sessions, it's not going to give you the value that it could bring. And it's also not if you're a complete beginner and you need the basics first, then we suggest you going through those steps instead. And if you feel that you're expecting guaranteed results without putting in any time or any effort, it's not going to be a perfect fit for you, because this mentorship requires your commitment. Jessica will provide all of the guidance so that you can do the work to create the change in your painting. So there's no magic formula, because of course growth depends on your time, your commitment, your willingness to experiment. And what this mentorship offers is a clear structure, honest guidance, professional feedback from a master artist. And Artefacto and this mentorship will create the environment, and you will create the results. And here are the 3 different pricing plans. And if you have already joined the standard plan, that is what we call the pre-recorded program, then please email our team so that you get support in joining the mentorship. So the mentorship that we have spoken about now, that is called mentorship only for experienced artists ready for direct specific critique and feedback. And this is without the main pre-recorded course. And this is only the pre-recorded course, and the elite plan includes both, which is of course the most value and the most supportive one of all of these choices. A bonus for all of the plans is a recording of this workshop. And here are the prices that we are having right now when we're still having this conversation. So these are the live stream prices. They will go up as soon as we finish this conversation. There are only 20 spots for the elite and mentorship only plans. I don't even know if there are any left, but if there are, make sure to check it out if you want to join this one. And we have the standard plan. If you just want to do things at your own pace and you're not looking for feedback, then join the program, which is called the standard plan. So that is an overview of everything, and you can join by scrolling down, and below this video you will find a button, and then you can click on or scroll down on the next page and choose your pricing plan. And the mission here is to help you stop guessing, start knowing, and the goal is not to paint like Jessica. You might be into a completely different style, and the whole goal is for you to paint like you with clarity and purpose. So we have so many comments from people who have studied with Jessica in the past. Jessica, you're a great artist and philosopher, great teaching on watercolors and a wonderful philosophy on art. Thank you, Jessica. Really enjoyed everything. Very helpful. So many helpful tips, etc. And the mentorship specifically is not about copying, it's about becoming. And of course you can choose the program, the mentorship, and both if that's the perfect fit for you. So how it works logistically is that you click the button, you choose the pricing plan, you pay, and you can pay via bank card or PayPal. It's a secure payment. And after you have done that, you will get access to the course at on the platform immediately. And of course the live sessions will be will not be immediately because they are happening live. And we also have a guarantee because we want everyone to feel that this is a good fit for them. And this is especially for those who join. This is for those who join the program. And that is after a couple of lessons, after a couple of weeks after payment. If you realize that this is not going to give you the results you want, it doesn't fit you, it's not going to support you, just write us an email and you will get your money back. And the most valuable thing you gain is a thinking system and if you join the mentorship, especially someone who can see what you cannot do, what you can't see yet.
Yet.
Yes. And if you've already completed the master's journey, what we call the standard plan on the page, you are eligible for a special conditions. So just write us an email as soon as you see this so that you get your personal offer, because that is a special offer for those who have already joined the program. And now it's time for a Q&A. And first and foremost, do you have a few moments for Q&A, Jessica?
Oh
Because
yeah,
we've been here for a bit.
absolutely. Absolutely.
The first question that I remember in my head, and please, everyone who is here, if you're already here having questions, write them in the chat, because I might have missed some, because there has been so many comments now, and I've been so focused on different things. So please write your questions in the chat if they have not been answered yet. And the one that I remember is, what brush were you painting with? The one with the red handle, I think,
Oh, that one,
red brown.
it's a Princeton Velvet Touch Long Round. These are a newer find for me, and I'm a fan of them because the brush is longer. Let's see. Like this is a different brand, similar with brush, but you see how much longer the red one is? I like that because the body holds more paint in it when you're painting, and so you can work longer before you have to recharge the brush. They have a nice point, they last pretty well, and they're not super expensive. So I've been pretty happy with those for now. I'm always, I mean, materials
Yeah.
don't make the artist, right? There's so many things out there and we all like different things. If you can afford it, try different stuff. If not, there's plenty of less expensive options that work really well. And if it works for you, you don't have to use the same thing somebody else uses.
So true. And then we had a question in the beginning, which I really loved because it's from Maya, and it can be very hard when we watch someone else's work. And
Yeah,
let's take a look at this one, for instance. The question is, beautiful work, do you use white at all, like for the mist or the highlights?
sure. Very, very, very rarely at this point. If white comes out, um, I'm not opposed to using white by any means. I do certain shows where you're not allowed to use white. And so it became a thing I challenged myself with some years ago, is to just not. I do use masking fluid some. That comes with different challenges. This particular painting, I'm trying to remember. If I used masking fluid, it would have been for the highlighted edge of those logs and a few of the branches coming out, and that would be it. Nowhere else would I have used masking on that. There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, we're trying to make a good painting. So if using some white or another opaque pigment is going to make your painting better, go for it. There's plenty of paintings I did that I mean, I could tell you stories of things that ended up in very major shows that I had to, like, redoing one rock 26 times for painting that got into the American Watercolor Society. I was so unhappy. It was ridiculous. So typically I don't anymore. And the masking fluid, just to give you another little tip, because I have it here, the masking fluid I like is Pebeo. It's Pebeo is the brand name. They have it, you can buy the like little jars of it and use it with a brush or whatever tool you like. They also make these pens, and they have them in 2 different diameters. I like masking fluid for some things, but it comes with some real downsides. It makes a very hard, sharp edge, and it has, it's viscous. So it has a certain amount of surface tension. So you will get these rounded edges. So if you're doing like grasses and you want a sharp point and you've used masking fluid, if you want to get that sharp point, you have to go back in and paint darks or whatever the background is around each of those ends of the blades to get that shape. So I mean, if you really want to, it can work for that. I used to do that because I didn't feel confident in handling it a different way. And I thought it was a time saver, not a time saver, because I was going back in and fixing all of these things or changing all these things. But it's a good tool if it works for you.
We have another couple of tool questions, and the first one is, what watercolor paper do you usually use? Is it hot, cold press, smooth, rough? And do you have a favorite brand that works for
Yeah,
your style?
I am usually on 140-pound cold press, usually Arches,
Yeah.
partly because I bought a huge roll for some of the sizes I like to do. That's the only brand that makes it that
Ah,
large.
yeah.
And I stretch my paper is how I get it to not work. Not today's
Mm,
demo, I didn't stretch that.
no.
But I stretch my paper. If you're interested, I have instructions on how I stretch paper on my website. There's a materials page that I go into way too much detail, and there's like a 40-minute long video about all of the materials and all of your options, because some people want to know all of that.
Yeah.
It's overwhelming. There's so much stuff out there.
And Arches is very good for many layers, so I that was my guess.
Yeah, it's a good durable paper. There's lots of other good brands. Fabriano is a good brand. I do use Fabriano some too. There's others that I have because I've intended to play with them, and I just never end up with time to play or experiment because I'm
Ah,
very busy.
yeah,
I intend to. I've got the
yeah.
materials for it, and I might find something I love even more, and I would absolutely switch if I did.
Wonderful. And then we have another paper question from Sung. Uh, do you ever use tinted watercolor paper? And if so, when would you do that?
I haven't. I've not heard of tint. Are you tinting, like, does it come pre-tinted, or
I
do you
would
tint it
I would
yourself?
guess that it is pre-tinted, and then you would
I've not
probably
seen
need to
it.
use opaque, lighter
Yeah,
colors.
that might make some really cool effects. I've not used it. I've not even seen that before.
Wonderful. And then Jadranka asks, do you usually start with the dark values and then apply lighter color over like during this demo?
Yeah, so I don't have an usual.
No.
I have had usuals in the past. I used to have kind of like formulaic, not quite, but approaches I would do kind of the same way every time. And over the years, what I've learned about myself is some approaches don't suit my mood on that day. And then it becomes miserable to spend a day trying to force myself to, I've got a deadline coming, I've got 2 weeks to get there. I have to work a strong full day, but I'm not in the mood, and it's awful. So I've learned to paint the way I'm feeling and to kind of identify and see that. And it depends on lots of things. So some days I feel more confident than other days. If I'm feeling more confident, I will sometimes jump to finished values right out of, on the first layer, and I'm working things a certain way. Other times I might feel more timid, and I'll approach a little bit more gradually, like I'm not quite sure where I want those values to end up, or I feel uncertain that I'm going to handle this and have it look the way I want it to look. So I'll kind of sneak up on the values. I'll start a little bit lighter and build more layers. Sometimes I build layers because that's the look I want. Sometimes I specifically do 1 or 2 layers because that's the look that I want. Um, Kind of just varies. I do like what I showed you today with putting some of that neutral tint in to block in the dark values. That's something I kind of figured out, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, maybe. And I do really like that. I do a lot of larger paintings, and especially when I have a whole hillside and I want that feel, but I don't want to spend forever on every single shape. It's a time saver for me to kind of block in pretty quickly what those basic dark shapes are going to be. Helps me track where I am in the reference as I'm painting in those areas. And it, builds some of the value before you're even going. But I don't always do that. Sometimes I'll take a hillside and I'll do the lightest values first and then gradually build towards the darkest. It's kind of what I feel like and what the image looks like. Because sometimes some references, it just hits different, or I feel like I'm seeing those shapes in a different way. So whatever works for you is the best way to do it.
Thank you for that. And I just want to remind anyone who has been thinking, I think I want to join. I'm just going to wait till the end of the workshop. This is the end of the workshop. And there is an additional 10% discount that is only while we're still having this conversation. So that is just a reminder. If you have been like sitting and waiting until now, then now is the now. Now is that time, just so you know. And we had a question from Samantha. There was a part where you explained how to put down neutral tint and then going over with black, and there was mentioning of burnt umber and ultramarine as a combination to give it depth later on. Could you share that again? Because it happened pretty
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah, so I was using neutral tint to block in the location of the darkest values. I wasn't trying to hit the perfect finished value because I knew I was going to put layers of, in this case, green on top. And as you know, when we build layers, we're building value too, right? Because you can see through the paint layers in watercolor. So I was using the neutral tint to block those in. And then I was talking about how I was getting darker. And while it was still wet, I was laying in that kind of mid-value green. And then I was coming in with a darker paint to get some of those darks and let them bleed over into the green. And for that, I was using, yes, a mix of French ultramarine and burnt umber. A little bit more on the umber, so it was leaning a little bit towards the warm side of neutral, but really not brown, still very neutral, close to gray. But you could get that with red, yellow, blue, because brown really is a neutral orange. Brown is
Mhm.
mostly red and yellow with a little bit of blue in it. Everything we make comes from red, yellow, blue, right? So you don't have to go out and buy burnt umber to make the thing. I happen to like that one as a shortcut, but most of the browns, experiment with what you have. If you have browns and blues, play with them together. See what kinds of look you get. You might find a really beautiful combination that you just love and it becomes your new favorite thing.
And I have one more question, and that is that you mentioned that certain paints will lift easier if you place them below or on top, or could you explain what you figured out when it comes to
Yeah.
how to choose the right pigments for a layering process?
So you can layer however you want. What I see and what I've experienced with running into trouble is that if you do a lot of brush work, so if you do a lot of movement when you're layering, you're going to reconstitute all of those lower layers of pigment and they're all going to mix together. And then you'll have however many different pigments all mixing together. And that's where you can get things that start to look a little bit more muddy. So really the key to layering, pigment choices can be a part of it depending where you're at. But thinking about what's the shape you're wanting to make and then doing it with minimal brushwork. So having the right fluidity, the right amount of water and paint ratio before you bring it. So knowing you have the color and the value you want and that it's fluid enough that you can place a layer and get out of there. So you take your brush, just do minimal, like if you can do it just one little layer with that brush and then stop and leave it, it'll be clean and fresh and lovely looking. Even if you do 15 layers, you can have them be clean and fresh. But talking about the pigments, so our pigments are made from different things. Some are made from dyes, like chemical combinations that are dyes, and those are the general term is staining pigments. They stain your paper because they're a dye. They might lift a little bit, but they might not lift at all. Neutral tint is one of those. The neutral tint that I have used does not come up off the paper at all. Once it's down, that's it. It's not going to change. So it's great as an underlayer because it's not going to shift or move. You're not going to get uneven edges or strange things. Whatever shape you make, that shape is going to stay the same. Lifting pigments are pigments that will lift back up again. And typically, I'm not a pigment expert. So there's other people you could ask this. Pigment makers would be better. At some point I want to have a conversation with a pigment maker and make sure that I'm understanding things right. But some pigments, and I think it's the more staining ones are the more dye based. And from my experience, the pigments that lift more easily are ones that are mineral based. So like French ultramarine, that's largely it's ground up. I think it's lapis lazuli. And that is it's a mineral and it's ground up very small. So you've got these little pieces suspended in the water that are sitting on top of your paper. So when you put water back down again, those little pieces of pigment will kind of shift or lift. And so some of those can lift really well. So like the French ultramarine and burnt umber I use, those lift almost completely off the paper. You can almost get back to white with those two pigments. And different ones have different variabilities. I think the backs of tubes of paint, or if you find the manufacturer page, like some of the online shops where you can buy pigments, if you look up a brand, pick a pigment, there will be like a link to pigment information. And usually in there, it will tell you things like how light fast it is and whether or not it's staining. So that can be helpful, or you can, do a Google search and look for that. If you're using, so when I was using the burnt umber and French ultramarine as my darks, those will lift so much, and it's not just an issue of it lifting, because I do know how to apply a clean, gentle wash on top, but it softens the edges. And so if I wanted the look of the edge that I had in my underpainting, it's going to soften if you do that with a lifting pigment, just because those pigments are going to start to shift a little bit as they get re-wet because they're just sitting on the surface of the paper. So
Thank you
hopefully
so
that
much for that.
makes sense.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
absolutely. And I think that the values are the most important. Color choices and even pigment choices are not as important.
No,
And
but we love color.
but it's fun.
Yes,
So thank you so much for this, Jessica. It's time to wrap up. So I'm
absolutely.
just going to share a couple of more comments before we wrap up this session together. So first and foremost, warmest welcome to everyone who has already joined the mentorship. I've seen a couple of comments in the chat and everyone else who has joined. Super excited for all of you. And if you have joined the program, so the pre-recorded standard plan program, Master's Journey, super excited for you as well. And if this is not where you are at, if for some reason you are looking for something else, a different subject, this different different format, there will be chances to attend something that works for you as well. And we have an opening right now to write to us at info@artefactoschool.online, where you can simply write and say, hey, I am looking for this. And our team will personally recommend the perfect program for you. Now, of course, I hope that you feel that Jessica's programs, in pluralis, are the perfect fit for you. But of course, we are all at different stages of our journey looking for different things. So if you feel that I want to know what the team says is the perfect fit for me, you can actually write to us right now at info@artefactoschool.online and just write what course, and then just a quick explanation of what you're looking for, and our team will give you the perfect fit. So just so you know, that opportunity is there. And Artefacto is a space where you are invited to continue growing and exploring. So we do have events, and you can make sure to check out the email newsletter, the Instagram, the YouTube, and you can subscribe, and then we get to see you the next time. And if you join Jessica's pre-recorded program, you will see her lessons straight after you purchase it. And if you join the mentorship, you will have the pleasure to joining her, talking to her, asking your questions, and exploring all of these topics much, much, much further than we had a chance to do today. So those were the final words from me and our team at Artefacto. And now my question for you, Jessica, is what are the final words that you have, that if you were to wrap up what we have done and what you want us to leave with?
I would just say, if you like painting, just keep painting and don't listen to the noise that makes you feel bad about any choices you make or the way you want to work or anything about it, because this is all yours and for you. And you should paint the way you want to paint, the materials you want to paint, the subject and the style and everything else. And any instructor you have should be trying to help meet you there. And if not, don't let it make you feel bad. Your instructor maybe doesn't understand or has a different philosophy about how to approach things. There's nothing wrong with what you're doing. It's all okay. You get to paint however you want to paint. And also, I love the painting you have on the wall in the back. Is that one of yours?
Yes.
Nice.
More in
Good
your
job.
approach than some of the more 2 or 3 brush strokes kind of
Sure.
people.
Sure. Yeah, I love that. It has a great mood.
Oh, thank you so much. So take this to heart, use the inspiration, and if I know that there were quite a lot of questions that we didn't have time for, if you join the mentorship, there will be lots of more time for more questions, because
All
there's
the
always
questions.
the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and we could spend hours, much more, many more hours. But I hope that these 2.5+ hours have been inspiring, that you have had aha moments, and that you make sure to take some notes now after this, so that you use those aha moments, just like Jessica has invited us and encouraged us to actually take some notes and be your own coach as well. We have these other coaches that helps us see our blind spots and take us further, and then we can also activate that inner coach as well to just make the process and the progress even faster and more empowering and amazing. And we have, as I mentioned, lots of more questions, but I think it's time to wrap up. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us and stayed with us throughout this workshop. And thank you so much, Jessica, for sharing so much information, inspiration, philosophy, technical tips, thinking, value thinking tips. And I hope that everyone feels inspired, and I look forward to seeing you next time, whenever and however that is.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks
Thank you
everyone
so much.
for being here and giving us your time.
Thanks.